Imagine a future where technology has unlocked the potential for humanity to thrive, yet the echoes of past civilizations' mistakes threaten to undo it all. Can we break the cycle of rise and fall, or will we become another forgotten empire, lost to history's unforgiving tides? Long before the rise of cities and complex societies, humans lived in small, nomadic groups, moving with the seasons and hunting and gathering their food. The world was a vast wilderness, and survival depended on the ability to track animals, find edible plants, and adapt to the changing environment. Early humans relied on their instincts, strength, and a deep knowledge of the land to survive. Their tools were simple: stones, bones, and sticks shaped to serve specific tasks. Communication was limited to gestures, sounds, and expressions, a rudimentary way of sharing knowledge and coordinating efforts. The shift from this nomadic lifestyle to a more settled existence marks one of the most profound changes in human history. As the climate warmed and the Ice Age ended, the world began to change. Humans started to notice patterns in nature, the cycles of seasons, the growth of plants, and the movement of animals. Over thousands of years, they began to experiment with planting seeds, raising animals, and developing farming techniques. This shift allowed humans to settle in one place, creating the first villages and eventually towns. The once nomadic groups now grew stable communities, relying on farming for food instead of hunting and gathering. With settled life came new challenges and new innovations. The ability to control food production meant humans could stay in one place, but it also required more effort. People had to find ways to store food, manage irrigation, and protect crops from pests. Over time, people began to develop specialized tools and techniques: better plows, stronger pottery, and simple irrigation systems. These innovations were crucial to survival and allowed early societies to flourish. The control of fire, one of the earliest and most important discoveries, continued to shape human life. Fire provided warmth, light, and protection from wild animals. It also allowed for cooking, which made food more nutritious and easier to digest. As humans learned to harness fire, they became better equipped to deal with their environment and improve their way of life. The development of language was another critical milestone. While early communication began with gestures and sounds, the need for more complex interactions drove humans to develop language. This allowed them to share ideas, pass down knowledge, and coordinate more effectively. Over time, language became more structured, evolving into the first forms of written communication. These early advancements laid the foundation for what would become the first great civilizations. The world was no longer a place of scattered tribes struggling for survival, but a world where people were learning to build societies. As farming spread and villages grew, the foundations of civilization, settlement, cooperation, and innovation began to take shape. It was here, in the early days of human history, that the seeds of culture, technology, and governance were first sown. In the heart of Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the first great civilization began to emerge. This land, often referred to as the cradle of civilization, would become the birthplace of Sumer, a society that laid the foundations for much of human culture, governance, and technological advancement. The rivers themselves were a vital part of life, providing water for irrigation, enabling agriculture, and serving as key transportation routes. They transformed the region into a fertile crescent, where once scattered groups began to settle, build, and thrive. The earliest Sumerians built their cities on the banks of these rivers, where they could take advantage of the fertile soil left by annual floods. These floods deposited rich silt, allowing crops to grow in abundance. Over time, villages grew into bustling cities. Uruk and Eridu are often recognized as two of the first urban centers of this civilization. These cities were much more than mere settlements. They were vibrant centers of culture, religion, and power. Uruk, with its monumental walls and towering temples, stood as one of the largest cities of the ancient world. Eridu, believed by many to be the oldest city in Sumer, became a spiritual hub where religious practices and priestly power played a central role in daily life. The Sumerians were among the first to realize the power of writing. In their pursuit of organizing trade, managing agricultural records, and preserving religious traditions, they developed one of the earliest forms of written language cuneiform. This system, inscribed on clay tablets with a reed stylus, began as simple pictographs, but evolved into a complex script used to document laws, business transactions, and stories. The development of writing marked a monumental leap in human history, allowing knowledge to be passed down, preserved, and expanded upon. With cities came governance. The Sumerians were among the first to establish organized systems of rule. Kings and priests held significant power, overseeing everything from the construction of ziggurats, massive step pyramids dedicated to their god Sto, the daily distribution of food and resources. The concept of law was formalized, and the earliest known legal codes began to take shape, governing everything from trade agreements to punishments for theft. In Sumer, religion was not just a personal belief, but a force that shaped the very structure of society. Gods were believed to control the forces of nature, and the Sumerians built grand temples to honor them, offering sacrifices and performing rituals to ensure prosperity and stability. The gods were also seen as protectors of the city-states, and rulers often claimed divine favor as the basis for their authority. As the cities of Sumer continued to flourish, so too did the advances in technology and culture. Innovations in metallurgy, pottery, and agriculture spread across the region, and the people of Sumer laid the groundwork for later civilizations. They demonstrated that a successful society depended not only on natural resources, but on the ability to organize, communicate, and build upon the collective knowledge of generations. It was here, in the heart of Mesopotamia, that the seeds of civilization first took root. Along the banks of the Nile River, one of the world's oldest and most enduring civilizations began to take shape. Egypt, with its unique geography, was a land blessed by the annual flooding of the Nile, which enriched its soil and provided fertile ground for agriculture. As early as 3100 BCE, the people of Egypt were beginning to form organized settlements, drawing from the river's resources for both survival and prosperity. This region, however, was not a unified nation, but a land divided into two distinct kingdoms, Upper Egypt to the south and Lower Egypt to the north. The unification of these two lands is credited to King Narmer, also known as Menes, around 3100 BCE. Narmer's triumph over the northern kingdom marked the beginning of Egypt's first dynasty and established the pharaoh as the central figure of power. His victory was symbolized by the famous Narmer palette, a ceremonial artifact depicting the king wearing the crowns of both Upper and Lower Egypt. This unification allowed for centralized control, bringing together the two regions under one ruler. It also set the stage for the creation of a highly structured society that would flourish for millennia. Under Narmer and his successors, Egypt developed a system of governance that placed the pharaoh at the heart of both political and religious life. The pharaoh was not simply a king, he was considered a divine figure, a living god on earth, who was responsible for maintaining Ma'at, or cosmic order. This belief in divine kingship permeated every aspect of Egyptian life and influenced everything from law and politics to art and culture. The pharaoh was also seen as the intermediary between the gods and the people, and his rule was believed to ensure the prosperity and stability of the land. As Egypt's power grew, so too did its architectural and religious ambitions. The construction of monumental structures like the pyramids began during the Old Kingdom period, symbolizing Egypt's grandeur and devotion to the gods. The pyramids, particularly those at Giza, are among the most iconic symbols of ancient Egypt. These massive stone structures were built as tombs for the pharaohs, reflecting the Egyptian belief in an afterlife where the king would continue to rule. The construction of these pyramids involved immense planning and labor, showcasing Egypt's advanced knowledge in engineering and mathematics. Religion played a pivotal role in the development of Egyptian society. The Egyptians were polytheistic, worshipping a vast pantheon of gods and goddesses who controlled various aspects of life. Temples dedicated to these deities were built throughout the land, and rituals and sacrifices were performed to honor them. The most famous of these deities was Ra, the sun god, whose daily journey across the sky was thought to govern the passage of time and the cycles of life. The afterlife was of paramount importance to the Egyptians, and they believed that proper burial rites and offerings would ensure a safe journey to the next world, where the soul would live on in eternity. By the time of the Old Kingdom's peak, Egypt had become a powerful and sophisticated civilization. Its advances in writing, mathematics, and medicine set the foundation for future dynasties and left a lasting legacy on human history. The rise of Egypt was not only a triumph of human ingenuity, but also the birth of a culture that would continue to influence the world for thousands of years to come. The invention of writing marked a turning point in human history, transforming societies from oral traditions to systems capable of preserving and transmitting complex information. In the ancient world, as civilizations grew in size and complexity, the need to document events, laws, and trade became essential. Writing emerged independently in different parts of the world, adapting to the needs of each culture. One of the earliest and most significant writing systems was cuneiform, developed by the Sumerians around 3200 BCE in Mesopotamia. The earliest cuneiform script began as simple pictographs, representing objects and actions, but over time evolved into a more abstract system of wedge-shaped marks inscribed on clay tablets. Initially, these marks were used for keeping records of agricultural produce and trade, but as the system advanced, it became a tool for documenting laws, contracts, and royal decrees. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known literary works, was recorded in cuneiform, illustrating how writing began to serve as a medium for storytelling and preserving cultural knowledge. In Egypt, writing took on a different form with the development of hieroglyphics. Beginning around 3100 BCE, hieroglyphs were used primarily for religious and ceremonial purposes, carved onto tombs and monuments. The system was a combination of pictorial symbols and phonetic characters, allowing it to represent both objects and sounds. Much like cuneiform, hieroglyphics served to document royal decrees and religious texts, most famously the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which provided instructions for the afterlife. As Egypt's bureaucracy grew, hieroglyphics were adapted for administrative purposes, appearing on papyrus scrolls used for recording taxes, trade, and legal matters. The invention of writing served a crucial function in governance. In both Mesopotamia and Egypt, it enabled rulers to create laws and establish order in rapidly expanding empires. The Code of Hammurabi, a well-known Babylonian law code written in cuneiform, is one of the earliest examples of writing as a tool for legal enforcement. By inscribing these laws on large stone tablets, Hammurabi ensured that they would be accessible to all, establishing a foundation for justice that transcended oral tradition. Similarly, in Egypt, royal decrees and edicts were written on monuments and walls, reinforcing the pharaoh's divine authority and the centralization of power. Writing also revolutionized communication, enabling long-distance correspondence and the exchange of ideas between distant regions. Trade, once reliant on face-to-face negotiations, became more efficient with the ability to record transactions and agreements. Diplomatic correspondence flourished, with letters exchanged between rulers, and administrative records allowed for the management of vast territories. The ability to write down and preserve information provided civilizations with the means to pass knowledge down through generations, ensuring continuity and stability. What began as a simple means of record-keeping slowly evolved into a profound force that reshaped the way humans interacted with their world, giving rise to the foundations of modern civilization. Writing was not only a tool for governance but also a vehicle for cultural expression, turning the abstract into something tangible, shaping the future in ways that could not have been imagined in the earliest days of human existence. In the early civilizations of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, religion played a central role in shaping societal structures and governance. These ancient societies developed intricate belief systems, often centered around gods and goddesses who were believed to control the forces of nature and human fate. The divine was not seen as separate from the everyday world, but as an active and essential force that guided all aspects of life. In Mesopotamia, the pantheon of gods was vast and diverse, with deities representing everything from the heavens to the earth, water, and agriculture. The Sumerians, followed by the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, believed that their gods ruled over every aspect of existence. The most prominent god was Anu, the sky god, followed by Enlil, the god of air, and Enki, the god of water and wisdom. These deities were not only worshipped in temples but were also central to the political power structures. Kings and rulers in Mesopotamia often claimed divine approval, with their rule being justified through the belief that they were chosen by the gods to govern. The ziggurats, massive step temples that reached towards the heavens, served as centers for religious and political life. They were not only places of worship, but also where rulers would seek the favor of the gods for prosperity and military success. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, religion was deeply entwined with the state's power. The pharaoh, believed to be the living god Horus on earth, was the divine ruler of the land. This belief in the divine right of kings reinforced the pharaoh's authority, as the ruler was seen as a direct intermediary between the gods and the people. The Egyptians created a pantheon of gods, with Ra, the sun god, at the top, followed by Osiris, Isis, and countless others representing various aspects of life. Temples to these gods, such as the grand complexes at Karnak and Luxor, were centers of both religious practice and state power. The priests, who oversaw these temples, held significant sway, controlling vast wealth and resources, and their relationship with the pharaohs was crucial for maintaining social and political order. In the Indus Valley, although less is known about the specific deities, evidence suggests a sophisticated system of religious beliefs. The people of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro likely worshipped fertility gods, and the importance of water and nature is evident in the archaeological remains, including the prominent use of large baths for ritual purification. The city layouts also suggest that religious sites were integrated into the fabric of urban life, underscoring the interconnectedness of religion and governance. Temples, in all of these civilizations, were not merely places of worship, they were hubs of power and authority. They controlled land, wealth, and labor, and acted as symbols of divine authority in the political realm. Religious leaders and kings often worked together to ensure the stability of the state, reinforcing the idea that divine favor was essential for a prosperous society. Through their rituals and temple activities, they maintained a balance between the gods and the people, ensuring the continued favor of the divine. The Indus Valley Civilization, one of the world's earliest urban cultures, emerged around 3,300 BCE along the banks of the Indus River in what is today Pakistan and northwest India. The cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, among others, stand as remarkable testaments to the advanced nature of this civilization. These urban centers were among the most well-planned cities of their time, showcasing a level of organization that was far ahead of many contemporaneous societies. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were not only bustling trade hubs, but also masterpieces of urban design. Streets were laid out in grid patterns, a concept far ahead of its time. Houses, built from standardized mud bricks, were arranged in neat rows, often with courtyards and drainage systems that suggest a high level of civic planning. Both cities had sophisticated systems of water management, with wells, drains, and large bathing areas, such as the famous Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, a structure that likely held ritual or public significance. The uniformity of the brick sizes and street grids suggests that the cities were constructed under a centralized plan, and the existence of advanced drainage systems indicates a concern for public health that was unparalleled in the ancient world. The Indus Valley people were also skilled artisans and traders. Their cities were located near major trade routes, and evidence of trade with Mesopotamia, as well as local industries, points to a thriving economy. Items such as beads, pottery, and tools made from materials like carnelian, copper, and bronze were produced in abundance. The people of the Indus Valley are believed to have had a script, although it remains undeciphered to this day. Despite these advances, much about their social organization, religious practices, and governmental structures remains a mystery. The decline of the Indus Valley civilization around 1900 BCE is one of the great unsolved mysteries of ancient history. The cities were abandoned and fell into ruin, leaving behind evidence of once thriving communities. Several theories attempt to explain the decline, ranging from shifts in climate and natural disasters, such as floods or droughts, to shifts in river courses that disrupted agricultural systems. There is also evidence of signs of societal stress, such as a decline in the quality of craftsmanship and fewer large public projects, which may suggest that internal factors, including economic or political instability, played a role. Some scholars even speculate that the invasion of foreign tribes, or the rise of new cultural influences from surrounding areas, could have contributed to their collapse. Regardless of the cause, the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro stand as enduring symbols of the sophistication and mystery of the Indus Valley civilization, whose sudden disappearance still captivates the imagination of historians and archaeologists. The concept of kingship in early civilizations emerged as societies grew larger and more complex. As cities and states developed, the need for centralized leadership became essential for maintaining order, resolving disputes, and ensuring the protection of both the land and its people. Early rulers were often seen not just as political leaders but as divine figures, chosen by the gods to rule and protect the land. One of the earliest known kings, Gilgamesh of Uruk, embodies the connection between divine right and kingship. Gilgamesh, a figure both legendary and historical, was believed to be 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. His rule, which likely occurred around 2700 BCE, was characterized by the building of massive city walls and the pursuit of glory. He was not just a king, but a hero in his own right, immortalized in the epic that bears his name. The Epic of Gilgamesh is one of the oldest known works of literature and reveals much about how early kings were viewed as both rulers and semi-divine figures, embodying the aspirations and values of their people. In ancient Egypt, kingship was intertwined with religion to a profound extent. The pharaoh, regarded as both the political leader and the living god, was believed to be the intermediary between the gods and the people. The divine right of kings was central to Egyptian governance. The pharaoh was seen as the earthly embodiment of Horus, the god of the sky and kingship. This connection with the divine justified the pharaoh's absolute power, with the belief that the king's actions were divinely sanctioned. The pharaoh's role extended beyond leadership in warfare and administration. It also involved overseeing religious rituals and ensuring harmony between the divine and earthly realms, known as Ma'at, which represented balance, justice, and order. The early Egyptian dynastic period began with the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt by King Narmer, also known as Menes, around 3100 BCE. Narmer's unification of the two regions marked the beginning of the First Dynasty and the consolidation of kingship as a divine institution. Narmer's role as both a political and spiritual leader was reinforced through the symbolism of his crown and royal insignia, which were powerful representations of his divine right to rule. As Egypt's rulers became more firmly entrenched, their divine status was reinforced by monumental structures like the pyramids, which were built as tombs for the kings to ensure their immortality. The divine right of kingship became a concept that transcended individual rulers. It was a belief system that justified the king's power through the favor of the gods and was fundamental to the governance of early civilizations. Kings like Gilgamesh and Narmer set the stage for future rulers to be seen not merely as political leaders, but as divinely ordained protectors and caretakers of their people, entrusted with the well-being of the state and its gods. This view of kingship laid the foundation for the political structures that would shape civilizations for millennia. The Old Kingdom of Egypt, often referred to as the Age of the Pyramids, marked a period of great achievement and consolidation of power that shaped the civilization for centuries. This era, spanning from roughly 2686 to 2181 BCE, saw the rise of the pharaoh as both a political and divine figure, reinforcing Egypt's centralized and highly structured government. During the reign of the Third Dynasty, the pharaohs began to construct monumental structures that would define Egypt's landscape and its religious and cultural legacy. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu, stands as a testament to the advanced engineering skills of the Egyptians and their ability to mobilize vast resources. It was not merely a tomb for the king, but a symbol of his divine authority and eternal power. The pyramid, originally covered in smooth white limestone, was designed to reflect the rays of the sun, reinforcing the pharaoh's role as the intermediary between the gods and humanity. Alongside the Great Pyramid, the nearby pyramids of Khafre and Menkaure, as well as the iconic Great Sphinx, were also constructed, further symbolizing the enduring nature of the pharaoh's rule. The construction of these grand structures was a massive undertaking that required not only a large workforce, but also a highly organized bureaucracy. The pharaoh, considered a living god on earth, wielded immense power, and his role as a god-king was central to the Egyptian state. The belief in the divine right of the pharaoh was reinforced through religious rituals and the construction of temples dedicated to the gods, all of which were designed to ensure the continued favor of the gods and the stability of the kingdom. The pharaoh's role in maintaining mate, or cosmic order, was of paramount importance. By fulfilling his duties to the gods, the pharaoh ensured peace, prosperity, and the regular flooding of the Nile, which was essential for Egypt's agricultural success. The centralization of power in ancient Egypt during this period was remarkable. The pharaoh not only ruled over all aspects of governance, including law, warfare, and diplomacy, but also controlled the religious life of the kingdom. The temples, which served as both religious and economic hubs, were closely aligned with the royal court. The priests, who managed these institutions, acted as intermediaries between the people and the gods, reinforcing the pharaoh's divine mandate. This centralized power allowed Egypt to develop a highly structured society, with the pharaoh at its apex and a complex system of officials, administrators, and workers supporting the state. Despite the grandeur and stability of the Old Kingdom, the centralized power structure eventually faced challenges. The monumental building projects, the demand for resources, and the pressures of governance eventually led to tensions and a weakening of the pharaoh's authority. However, the legacy of the Old Kingdom, particularly its architectural and cultural achievements, continued to shape Egyptian civilization long after the era's decline. The Great Pyramids and the Sphinx, enduring symbols of ancient Egypt's power and divine kingship, remain to this day as monuments to the civilization's remarkable achievements. The rise of Mesopotamian empires marked a significant shift in the political and social landscape of the ancient world. From the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates, several powerful civilizations emerged, most notably the Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian empires. These empires were born out of a need for control over the region's vast agricultural resources and the desire to expand their influence through military conquest and diplomatic alliances. The Akkadian Empire, founded by Sargon of Akkad in the 24th century BCE, was the first to establish a true empire in Mesopotamia. Sargon's conquests unified the Sumerian city-states, stretching Akkadian influence across a large part of the region. By creating a centralized government, Sargon set a precedent for future empires. His military prowess and ability to maintain control over vast territories established a model for future rulers. Under his rule, Akkadian became the lingua franca of the region, unifying the diverse peoples within his empire. The Babylonian Empire, rising to prominence under King Hammurabi in the 18th century BCE, built upon the foundations of earlier civilizations. Hammurabi is best known for his Code of Laws, one of the earliest and most complete written legal systems in history. Known as Hammurabi's Code, this set of laws established a system of justice based on the principle of retaliation, or an eye for an eye. It provided a framework for governance and justice, ensuring stability in the empire. Hammurabi's Code is considered a monumental achievement in the history of legal systems, influencing subsequent legal frameworks in the ancient world. The Assyrian Empire, which rose to power in the 9th century BCE, is often remembered for its ruthless military strategies and the expansion of its territory through aggressive conquest. Assyria's kings, such as Tiglath-Pileser III and Ashurbanipal, led relentless campaigns to conquer surrounding lands, including parts of the Levant, Egypt, and Mesopotamia. Their military innovations, such as the use of cavalry and siege warfare, enabled them to defeat formidable enemies and maintain a vast empire. The Assyrian military was not just a force of conquest, but also a tool of intimidation, using terror to maintain control over conquered peoples. The Assyrians built an empire that stretched from the Persian Gulf to Egypt, with a centralized bureaucracy that helped manage their vast holdings. Military conquest played a crucial role in the formation and expansion of these empires. For each of these civilizations, success in battle was vital not only for territorial expansion, but also for securing resources, trade routes, and political dominance. In Mesopotamia, the military became an integral part of the state apparatus, with leaders relying on professional armies to enforce their rule. Together, these empires, Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian, left an indelible mark on the ancient world. Their legacies, from Hammurabi's legal innovations to the military strategies of the Assyrians, shaped the course of history in the Near East. These empires demonstrated the complex relationship between military power, governance, and law, which would continue to influence civilizations for millennia. Sumer, often regarded as the cradle of civilization, laid the foundations for much of Mesopotamian culture, technology, and governance. Its innovations in writing, architecture, and social structure would influence the region for centuries, even as its cities eventually declined. Though Sumer itself disappeared into the annals of history, its cultural and technological legacy endured, continuing to shape subsequent civilizations in the region. The Sumerians were pioneers in many respects, and their contributions helped define the course of Mesopotamian development. One of the most significant of these was the invention of cuneiform writing. Initially developed for accounting and administrative purposes, cuneiform evolved into a complex system capable of recording laws, literature, and scientific knowledge. The creation of a written language transformed the way societies functioned, allowing for the preservation of history and the establishment of a more structured, law-abiding state. Sumer's writing system influenced later cultures such as the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, all of whom adopted and adapted it for their own use. Sumerian architecture also left an enduring legacy. The ziggurat, a massive stepped pyramid, became a symbol of Sumerian religious devotion. These impressive structures, dedicated to the gods, were architectural feats that demonstrated not only the Sumerians' skill in engineering, but also their societal structure. They reflected the central role of religion in daily life, with temples functioning as both spiritual centers and administrative hubs. The design of these ziggurats influenced architectural traditions across Mesopotamia and beyond, shaping temple construction for generations to come. The Sumerians also made advances in technology and mathematics that continued to impact later civilizations. Their development of the wheel and plough revolutionized transportation and agriculture, two key elements of Mesopotamian life. They also established a base 60 system of counting, which has persisted in our measurement of time and angles to this day. These innovations were not isolated, but were part of a broader trend in which Sumer's technological advancements laid the groundwork for future developments in both the practical and intellectual domains. Despite these monumental contributions, Sumer faced numerous challenges that led to its eventual decline. By the end of the 3rd millennium BCE, the city-states of Sumer were weakened by internal conflict, external invasions, and the rise of more powerful neighbors like the Akkadian Empire. The collapse of Sumerian political power, however, did not erase its cultural influence. The Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, who succeeded the Sumerians, inherited much of their technological and cultural legacy. In fact, much of Mesopotamian civilization's development in the following centuries was built upon the Sumerian foundation. While the Sumerian cities faded into history, their contributions endured. Their innovations in writing, law, and technology continued to influence the societies that followed. Sumer's legacy is a testament to the enduring power of human creativity and ingenuity, and its impact reverberated through the ancient world for centuries after its decline. The seeds planted by the Sumerians blossomed into the great civilizations of the ancient Near East, ensuring that Sumer's influence would never truly be forgotten. The Hittites, an ancient civilization that flourished in Anatolia, were known for their military prowess and ability to adapt and innovate within the complexities of the ancient world. Their rise to power in the 17th century BCE marked a significant shift in the dynamics of the ancient Near East. The Hittite kingdom, centered in modern-day Turkey, became one of the most powerful empires of its time, rivaling the great civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia. One of the key factors behind the Hittite success was their military innovations. They were among the first to use chariots in battle, a tactic that allowed them to maneuver more effectively on the battlefield and to dominate their adversaries. Their chariotry, often manned by elite warriors, became a defining feature of Hittite military campaigns and provided them with a decisive edge over enemies. The Hittites also pioneered the use of iron, a technological leap that would give them superior weaponry and tools, setting them apart from other civilizations still reliant on bronze. This mastery of ironworking allowed them to equip their armies with more durable weapons and armor, making their forces formidable in combat. In addition to military innovations, the Hittites were skilled diplomats, often negotiating peace and alliances with neighboring empires. One of their most notable diplomatic achievements was the signing of the Treaty of Kadesh with Egypt around 1258 BCE. This agreement, which marked the end of the long-standing conflict between the Hittites and the Egyptians, was one of the earliest known peace treaties in history. It not only exemplified the Hittites' diplomatic acumen, but also highlighted their ability to balance military strength with political maneuvering. Despite these successes, the Hittite Empire eventually faced decline. Internal struggles, including succession disputes and regional uprisings, weakened the central authority of the Hittite kingdom. The empire's vast territory, stretching from Anatolia into parts of the Levant, proved difficult to govern effectively. Additionally, The growing power of external forces, particularly the Sea Peoples, contributed to the destabilization of the Hittite kingdom. By the end of the 12th century BCE, the Hittites had lost much of their territory, and their once great empire crumbled, marking the end of their dominance in the region. Although the Hittite kingdom ultimately fell, its legacy continued to influence the ancient world. The Hittites' advancements in military strategy, ironworking, and diplomacy left a lasting mark on subsequent civilizations. Their chariot warfare and iron technologies were adopted by neighboring cultures, and their legal and administrative systems served as models for other empires. The fall of the Hittites may have marked the end of their kingdom, but their contributions to the development of ancient civilizations ensured that their impact would be felt long after their demise. Around 1200 BCE, the ancient world underwent a catastrophic upheaval that led to the collapse of many powerful civilizations. This period, often referred to as the Bronze Age collapse, was marked by the sudden and widespread decline of several prominent cultures across the Near East, the Eastern Mediterranean, and parts of Europe. In the span of just a few decades, cities and empires that had stood for centuries were devastated, their cultural and economic structures shattered. What triggered this collapse remains a subject of debate among historians and archaeologists, but it was a combination of internal and external factors that brought the Bronze Age world to its knees. One of the most significant contributors to this collapse was the invasion of the Sea Peoples. These mysterious groups, whose origins are still unclear, are believed to have been a confederation of maritime raiders. They struck fear into the established kingdoms of the Eastern Mediterranean, from Egypt to the Hittite Empire, and caused widespread devastation. The Sea Peoples attacked coastal cities, plundering and burning them, and in some cases, forcing entire populations to flee or be enslaved. Their raids were especially devastating for the Hittites, who saw their empire crumble under the pressure. The Egyptian pharaoh Ramses III is famous for successfully defending Egypt against these invaders, but even his victories could not prevent the greater regional collapse. Along with the invasions, climate change and natural disasters likely played a crucial role. Evidence suggests that this period experienced significant shifts in weather patterns, including prolonged droughts, which severely affected agricultural production. This disruption of food supplies, combined with the strain of warfare and population movements, led to widespread famine and social unrest. Cities that once thrived on trade, such as Mycenae, Ugarit, and Troy, were abandoned or destroyed as resources dwindled, and survivors struggled to maintain order. Internally, many Bronze Age civilizations had grown fragile, weakened by years of political instability, economic decline, and class inequality. The trade routes that had once linked vast regions began to break down, leading to a collapse in economic networks. The decline of the palatial economies, particularly in Mycenae and Minoan Crete, made it difficult for rulers to maintain control over their territories, contributing to the disintegration of central authority. The destruction of these once mighty civilizations marked the end of the Bronze Age and the beginning of a darker, more fragmented era. The collapse did not occur all at once, but rather over several decades, with the remnants of the shattered societies retreating into more isolated, smaller settlements. However, it was also the end of one era and the beginning of another. The fall of the old powers led to the rise of new cultures and technologies, most notably the Iron Age, which would soon usher in new civilizations like the Greeks, Phoenicians, and Israelites. The legacy of the Bronze Age collapse lingered for centuries as it reshaped the political and cultural landscape of the ancient world, leaving behind a world forever changed. The New Kingdom of Egypt, which emerged around 1550 BCE, marked the pinnacle of Egypt's power and influence, a period in which the empire expanded its borders, achieved monumental military victories, and produced some of the most stunning cultural and architectural achievements in ancient history. The rise of the New Kingdom was largely attributed to the consolidation of power under powerful rulers who revived Egypt's former glory. Pharaohs like Hatshepsut and Ramses II shaped this era, leaving legacies that still resonate today. Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's most remarkable pharaohs, defied traditional gender norms by ruling as a female pharaoh. She took control of Egypt at a time when it was recovering from internal strife and external threats. Her reign, marked by peace and prosperity, saw the expansion of trade routes, most notably with the land of Punt and monumental building projects. The most famous of these is her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, a stunning architectural masterpiece that integrated seamlessly into the surrounding cliffs. Hatshepsut's rule was a symbol of Egypt's resilience and its ability to thrive under strong leadership, regardless of gender. Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great, is perhaps the most famous of the New Kingdom pharaohs, and for good reason. His reign, which lasted 66 years, was one of military conquest, diplomatic achievement, and cultural flourishing. Known for his military prowess, Ramses II led Egypt into numerous campaigns, most famously the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites. Although the battle was inconclusive, Ramses was able to secure peace through diplomacy, resulting in the first known peace treaty in history. This treaty marked a turning point in Egypt's foreign policy, as it established Egypt as a dominant power in the region. Ramses II's architectural legacy is no less impressive. He commissioned numerous building projects that left a permanent imprint on Egypt's landscape. His most famous constructions are the temples at Abu Simbel, monumental structures carved into the mountainside to commemorate his victory over the Nubians and to honor the gods. These temples, with their colossal statues of Ramses himself, served as symbols of his divine rule and military triumphs, designed to endure for millennia. His reign was also marked by the construction of new cities, temples, and monuments that cemented Egypt's cultural and architectural dominance. During the New Kingdom, Egypt's influence stretched far beyond its borders. The empire expanded into the Levant and Nubia, bringing vast territories under Egyptian control. Military expeditions in these regions not only secured Egypt's borders, but also provided wealth through tributes and resources. Egypt's reach was further solidified by its cultural impact, with Egyptian art, religion, and architecture influencing neighboring civilizations. The New Kingdom was a period of immense growth and consolidation, both in military and cultural terms. Egypt, under the pharaohs of this era, was a formidable empire, its legacy etched in stone through the monuments, temples, and achievements that still stand as testaments to its grandeur. This was a time when Egypt truly reigned supreme in the ancient world, its influence spreading far and wide across the ancient Mediterranean and Near East. The history of ancient China begins with the emergence of the first dynasties, marking the beginning of one of the world's oldest and most continuous civilizations. The Xia dynasty, often considered the first of China's imperial dynasties, is traditionally believed to have been founded around 2070 BCE by the legendary Emperor Yu. While historical evidence for the Xia remains limited, its importance lies in the role it played in shaping the myths and early governance structures that would influence Chinese culture for centuries to come. The Xia established the idea of hereditary rule, setting the foundation for the dynastic cycles that would govern China for millennia. The Yellow River, often referred to as the cradle of Chinese civilization, played a central role in the development of early Chinese society. Flowing through the northern plains of China, the Yellow River provided fertile soil for agriculture, allowing settled communities to flourish. The river's regular flooding, though often destructive, deposited nutrient-rich silt onto the land, making it ideal for growing crops like millet and wheat. This abundance of resources led to the growth of early villages, which eventually coalesced into powerful states. The fertile plains along the Yellow River became the heart of China's early civilization, with communities relying on agriculture for sustenance and trade. As Chinese society grew more complex, so too did its systems of governance and communication. The Xia dynasty, though overshadowed by later dynasties, laid the groundwork for the political structures that would follow. It was during this time that the roots of Chinese religious and philosophical thought began to take shape, with the early rulers often seen as intermediaries between the gods and the people. The rise of the Xia was soon followed by the Shang dynasty, which further developed the idea of centralized rule and divine kingship. The Shang rulers are credited with creating one of the earliest forms of writing, known as oracle bone script, which was used to communicate with ancestors and gods. These inscriptions, found on turtle shells and bones, represent the first step in the evolution of Chinese written language. By the time of the Shang dynasty, around 1600 BCE, Chinese culture had already begun to solidify its unique identity. The Shang rulers established their capital at Anyang, where extensive archaeological discoveries have uncovered palaces, bronze weapons, and ritual objects. These artifacts reveal the Shang's advanced technology, including their mastery of bronze casting, which played a vital role in both their military prowess and religious practices. The Shang also further developed the practice of ancestor worship, believing that the spirits of their forebears could influence the living world. The early dynasties of China, beginning with the mythical Xia, were instrumental in shaping the cultural and political landscape of ancient China. The Yellow River provided the fertile ground for agriculture, while the development of writing laid the foundation for a civilization that would endure for thousands of years. Though the Xia dynasty's existence is debated, its legacy in Chinese myth and governance was crucial in the formation of a civilization that would influence the world for millennia. The Maurya Empire, one of the largest and most influential empires in ancient Indian history, began with the unification of the Indian subcontinent under the leadership of Chandragupta Maurya in the 4th century BCE. Chandragupta's rise to power was a result of his strategic alliances and military prowess, which enabled him to overthrow the Nanda dynasty and establish his own rule. Under his leadership, the Maurya Empire grew rapidly, uniting much of the Indian subcontinent for the first time under a single political entity. His capital was established at Pataliputra, modern-day Patna, and from there, he expanded his empire through both military conquest and diplomatic negotiation, laying the foundation for a centralized administration that would endure for centuries. Chandragupta's grandson, Ashoka, would go on to become one of the most famous and transformative rulers in Indian history. Initially, Ashoka was a ruthless military leader, known for his conquests and expansion of the empire. However, after the brutal conquest of Kalinga, in present-day Odisha, which resulted in immense bloodshed and suffering, Ashoka experienced a profound transformation. He embraced Buddhism, renouncing violence and adopting a policy of peace and non-violence, which he promoted throughout his empire. This shift in Ashoka's philosophy was revolutionary, as he began to focus on the welfare of his people, emphasizing moral governance and ethical behavior. His support for Buddhism not only changed the course of his reign, but also deeply influenced the religious and cultural landscape of India. Ashoka's reign marked a period of remarkable political stability and cultural flourishing within the Maurya Empire. The king issued edicts inscribed on pillars and rocks across the empire, promoting Buddhist teachings, moral principles, and social welfare. These edicts, often carved in the local languages of the regions they governed, urged his subjects to live virtuous lives, respect all forms of life, and treat one another with kindness and fairness. Ashoka's conversion to Buddhism also led to the spread of the religion beyond India, as he sent missionaries to other parts of South and Southeast Asia, including Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Central Asia. The Maurya Empire, under Ashoka, thus became a key player in the global spread of Buddhism, which would later become one of the world's major religions. The Maurya Empire was not only significant for its political achievements, but also for its innovations in governance, infrastructure, and culture. The Mauryas established an efficient bureaucratic system that was vital for administering the vast empire. They built extensive road networks, which facilitated trade and communication across the empire, and standardized weights and measures, which promoted economic growth. In the fields of science, medicine, and the arts, the Mauryan period also saw advances in knowledge and culture, setting the stage for the later achievements of Indian civilization. The Maurya Empire, under Chandragupta and Ashoka, stands as a symbol of both political unity and cultural evolution in ancient India, leaving an indelible legacy that would shape the subcontinent for centuries to come. The Phoenicians, an ancient Semitic-speaking people who originated from the coastal region of modern-day Lebanon, became one of the most influential maritime civilizations of the ancient world. They were known for their exceptional seafaring skills, which enabled them to establish a vast network of trade routes across the Mediterranean. Cities like Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos flourished as powerful city-states, each contributing to Phoenicia's dominance in trade, especially in purple dye, glass, timber, and other luxury goods. Their ships, some of the fastest and most advanced of their time, carried goods as far as North Africa, Spain, and even parts of Britain, facilitating cultural exchange and establishing Phoenician presence in distant lands. Central to Phoenician culture was their development of the alphabet, which would leave a lasting impact on subsequent civilizations. Unlike earlier writing systems, which were complex and cumbersome, the Phoenician alphabet was composed of a small set of characters, each representing a sound rather than a word or syllable. This simplicity made it easier for people across the Mediterranean to learn and adopt, contributing to the spread of literacy. The Phoenician alphabet would eventually evolve into the Greek and Latin alphabets, the roots of most modern Western writing systems. This linguistic innovation not only streamlined communication, but also facilitated trade and administration, ensuring that the Phoenician influence would be felt long after their empire waned. One of the most notable legacies of the Phoenicians was the rise of Carthage, their most powerful colony. Located in what is now Tunisia, Carthage grew into a major naval and commercial power, eventually rivaling Rome for control of the Mediterranean. Over time, Carthage became a center of wealth and culture, boasting a formidable fleet and an advanced system of government. The Carthaginians, however, were not only known for their trade prowess, but also for their military might, which was most famously exemplified by the Carthaginian general Hannibal during the Second Punic War against Rome. Hannibal's daring crossing of the Alps with his war elephants remains one of the most remarkable military feats in history. Despite their remarkable achievements, the Phoenician civilization and its descendants in Carthage eventually succumbed to the rise of the Roman Republic. The Punic Wars, a series of conflicts between Rome and Carthage, culminated in the destruction of Carthage in 146 BCE. After a brutal siege, the city was razed, and its people were either killed or sold into slavery. The fall of Carthage marked the end of Phoenician dominance in the Mediterranean, but their contributions to writing, trade, and navigation endured. Their influence on Mediterranean culture, language, and technology continued to shape the course of history, even as the empire they had built vanished from the shores of North Africa. The Assyrian Empire, one of the most formidable military powers of the ancient world, rose to prominence in the Near East through a combination of innovation, ruthlessness, and relentless expansion. With their roots in the northern part of Mesopotamia, the Assyrians built an empire that stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. Their military success was based on a highly organized army, which utilized advanced tactics, siege warfare, and a well-trained corps of soldiers. The Assyrians also pioneered the use of iron weapons, giving them an advantage over their enemies who were still using bronze. With their innovations, they conquered vast swathes of territory, including parts of modern-day Iran, Turkey, Egypt, and Israel. Assyria's military prowess was matched by the cruelty of its rulers. Kings like Tiglath-Pileser III and Shalmaneser V focused on expanding their empire through continuous warfare, establishing Assyria as a dominant force in the ancient world. These kings implemented a policy of terror, intentionally inflicting suffering on their conquered peoples to break their spirits and discourage resistance. The Assyrians were infamous for their brutal treatment of prisoners of war, often taking them as slaves, flaying them alive, or impaling them as a warning to others. Tiglath-Pileser III, in particular, is known for reorganizing the empire's provinces and creating a highly centralized administration, which helped maintain Assyrian control over vast territories. His reign marked the beginning of Assyria's golden age, during which the empire reached its territorial zenith. Perhaps the most famous Assyrian king, Ashurbanipal, further cemented the empire's power during his reign. Known for his intellectual curiosity as well as his military might, Ashurbanipal is remembered for creating one of the ancient world's greatest libraries in Nineveh, the empire's capital. This library, which housed tens of thousands of clay tablets, preserved much of the knowledge of the time, including literary works, medical texts, and legal documents. Ashurbanipal's military campaigns were equally impressive, as he expanded Assyria's reach into Egypt and crushed rebellions within his own empire. His reign, however, also marked the beginning of Assyria's decline, as internal dissent and external pressures mounted against the empire. The Assyrian Empire's eventual fall came in the late 7th century BCE. After Ashurbanipal's death, the empire began to fracture. A coalition of Babylonians, Medes, and Scythians launched a series of attacks against Assyria, exploiting the weakening central power. The decisive blow came in 612 BCE, when the Babylonians and their allies sacked Nineveh. The fall of Nineveh signaled the end of the Assyrian Empire, and within a few years, the once mighty empire disintegrated. The Babylonians, under Nebuchadnezzar II, rose to power in the region, and Assyria was absorbed into a new era of Mesopotamian history. Despite their brutal and short-lived reign, the Assyrians left an enduring legacy through their military innovations, monumental architecture, and contributions to ancient knowledge. The Neo-Babylonian Empire, under the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II, rose to prominence as one of the most influential empires of the ancient world. Nebuchadnezzar, inheriting the throne in 605 BCE, quickly solidified his position through military conquest and strategic alliances. His reign marked the revival of Babylon as a dominant power in the Near East after the fall of the Assyrian Empire. Nebuchadnezzar's military campaigns expanded Babylonian control over large parts of Mesopotamia, Syria, and Judea, and his political acumen ensured that the Babylonian Empire became a central figure in the region. Under Nebuchadnezzar's rule, Babylon reached new heights in both cultural and architectural achievements. One of the most iconic symbols of his reign was the construction of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Although the existence and exact location of the gardens remain subjects of debate, ancient accounts describe them as an awe-inspiring feat of engineering. Built for his queen, Amytis of Media, the gardens were said to be a series of terraced gardens with plants from all over the empire, creating an oasis in the heart of the desert. Nebuchadnezzar's vision of grandeur extended to other monumental projects, such as the rebuilding of the Great Ziggurat and the construction of the impressive Ishtar Gate. Adorned with glazed brick reliefs of lions and dragons, the Ishtar Gate was a symbol of Babylon's divine protection and power, and it marked the entrance to the city from the north. These architectural wonders demonstrated Nebuchadnezzar's ambition to create a lasting legacy for his empire. However, Nebuchadnezzar's reign was not only defined by his architectural achievements, but also by the cultural and religious shifts that occurred within his empire. Perhaps the most significant of these shifts was the Babylonian exile of the Jewish people. In 586 BCE, after the destruction of Jerusalem and the burning of the First Temple, Nebuchadnezzar led a series of deportations that sent the Jewish people into captivity in Babylon. This exile marked a pivotal moment in Jewish history, as it forced the Jews to adapt to a foreign culture while preserving their own religious identity. The exile had a profound impact on the development of Jewish religious practices, as the focus shifted from temple worship to the study of sacred texts, laying the foundation for the Hebrew Bible. The Babylonian captivity would last for several decades, but in 539 BCE, with the fall of Babylon to the Persian king Cyrus the Great, the Jews were allowed to return to their homeland. Nebuchadnezzar's reign, marked by both glory and devastation, left a lasting imprint on the ancient world. His architectural feats and the cultural developments of his empire showcase the power and sophistication of Babylon. However, it was also a time of profound transformation for the Jewish people, whose faith and identity were shaped by the challenges of exile. The legacy of Nebuchadnezzar and the Neo-Babylonian Empire remains embedded in the history of the ancient Near East, influencing subsequent civilizations for centuries to come. The establishment of the Israelite monarchy marked a pivotal moment in the history of the ancient Near East. Prior to the monarchy, the tribes of Israel were governed by a system of tribal confederation, with no central leadership. However, the growing pressure from surrounding nations and internal divisions led the Israelites to seek a stronger, more unified rule. This desire culminated in the selection of Saul as the first king of Israel around 1050 BCE. Saul's reign, though marked by initial military successes, ended in turmoil and discontent due to his erratic behavior and failure to unite the tribes. His tragic death in battle, alongside his sons, left the throne to his successor, David, who would become one of the most significant figures in Israel's history. David's ascent to the throne brought stability and strength to Israel. A charismatic leader and military genius, David succeeded in uniting the 12 tribes of Israel, consolidating power, and establishing a strong central government. His military conquests expanded Israel's borders, and his reign is often remembered for its cultural and political achievements. David's most significant legacy, however, was his vision to build a permanent dwelling place for the Ark of the Covenant, which would solidify Jerusalem as the political and religious heart of Israel. While David laid the groundwork, it was his son, Solomon, who would bring this vision to fruition. Under Solomon's reign, Israel reached its zenith. Solomon, renowned for his wisdom and wealth, built the first temple in Jerusalem, a monumental structure that became the focal point of Jewish worship. The temple not only housed the Ark of the Covenant, but also symbolized the covenant between God and Israel. The construction of the temple marked the fulfillment of a promise that had been central to the Israelites' religious identity. Alongside the temple, Solomon's rule saw the construction of palaces, fortifications, and a thriving trade network that brought prosperity to Israel. He forged alliances with neighboring kingdoms, including Egypt, and oversaw the development of Israel's economy and culture. However, Solomon's reign also sowed the seeds of division. His extensive building projects and lavish lifestyle placed a heavy burden on the people, and his later years saw the rise of discontent. Upon Solomon's death in 931 BCE, the kingdom was divided into two: the northern 10 tribes, forming the Kingdom of Israel, and the southern Kingdom of Judah, which remained loyal to the Davidic line. This division would lead to centuries of conflict and rivalry, as both kingdoms faced external threats and internal strife. The rise and fall of the Israelite monarchy, marked by the reigns of Saul, David, and Solomon, left a deep and lasting legacy. The First Temple and the division of the kingdom became defining elements of Jewish history, shaping the religious and political future of the Israelites for generations to come. Despite the kingdom's eventual decline, the vision of a united Israel and the religious significance of Jerusalem endured throughout the centuries. The Greek Dark Ages, spanning from roughly 1200 BCE to 800 BCE, followed the dramatic collapse of the Mycenaean civilization a time when the once prosperous cities of the Aegean world were abandoned or destroyed. This period of decline is often marked by the disappearance of writing, monumental architecture, and the sophisticated trade networks that had once defined Mycenaean Greece. The reasons for this collapse remain unclear, but theories suggest a combination of invasions by the Sea Peoples, internal strife, and environmental factors may have led to the disintegration of the Mycenaean world. The cities that had once thrived fell into ruin, and Greece entered a time of relative obscurity. During this era, much of Greece reverted to a more rural, agrarian society. The large, centralized palaces that had defined the Mycenaean civilization were replaced by smaller, independent villages. These settlements, scattered across the Greek mainland, the Aegean Islands, and the coast of Asia Minor, were often isolated, with limited contact between communities. As the great Mycenaean cities were abandoned, Greece became a fragmented land of small, self-sufficient communities. This period saw the loss of the written language, with the Linear B script fading into obscurity, and oral traditions, instead, took center stage. However, by the end of the Greek Dark Ages, the seeds of future Greek greatness began to sprout. Slowly, Greece began to emerge from the ashes of its former glory. The formation of city-states, or polis, marked the beginning of a new era in Greek history. Among the most important were Athens, known for its eventual rise as the heart of democracy, and Sparta, renowned for its militaristic society and discipline. These city-states would later become the cornerstones of Greek civilization, each developing its own identity and contributing to the broader cultural, political, and military landscape of the ancient world. The Greek Dark Ages also saw the rise of Greek culture and the arts, albeit in more humble forms than those seen in the Mycenaean period. As literacy was lost, oral storytelling traditions flourished. The epic poems of Homer, including the Iliad and the Odyssey, were passed down through generations, capturing the tales of gods and heroes, the Trojan War, and the adventures of Odysseus. These works, filled with deep cultural meaning, would lay the foundation for much of Greek philosophy, literature, and theatre. By the time the 8th century BCE dawned, Greece had begun to recover its former vibrancy. The formation of these city-states laid the groundwork for the flowering of Greek civilization in the subsequent centuries. From the ruins of the Mycenaean world, Greek society was reborn, with a renewed sense of identity and cultural pride. The Greek Dark Ages, though a period of hardship and loss, set the stage for the classical age of Greece, which would produce some of the greatest achievements in human history. The Persian Empire, established by Cyrus the Great in the mid-6th century BCE, became one of the most powerful and expansive empires in ancient history. Cyrus's unification of the various Persian tribes and his conquest of the Medes laid the foundation for the Achaemenid dynasty. With brilliant military tactics and a visionary approach to governance, he expanded the empire from the Indus River to the Aegean Sea, uniting diverse peoples under one rule. His policy of religious tolerance and respect for local customs helped stabilize his vast empire, earning him a reputation as a just and enlightened ruler. Cyrus's successors, particularly Darius I and Xerxes I, continued to build on his achievements, expanding and consolidating Persian power. Darius I, known for his administrative genius, organized the empire into provinces called satrapies, each governed by a satrap. This system allowed for more efficient control over the far-flung territories and contributed to the empire's longevity. Darius also embarked on ambitious building projects, most notably the construction of Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the empire. Under Darius, the Persian Empire reached its greatest territorial extent, stretching from the Balkans and Greece to Egypt and the Indus Valley. Darius's reign also saw the development of key infrastructure, such as the Royal Road, which facilitated communication and trade across the empire. Additionally, The introduction of standardized coinage under Darius revolutionized the economy, creating a system of currency that helped unify the diverse regions of the empire. Xerxes I, Darius's son, is perhaps best remembered for his role in the Persian Wars, particularly the ill-fated invasion of Greece. Xerxes sought to avenge the defeat of his father at Marathon and expand Persian influence into Greece. His vast army, reportedly numbering in the hundreds of thousands, marched into Greece, initially achieving successes at Thermopylae and Athens. However, the Greek city-states, most notably the combined forces of Athens and Sparta, mounted a fierce resistance, culminating in the decisive naval victory at Salamis. This defeat, followed by the subsequent Greek victories at Plataea and Mycale, marked the beginning of the decline of Persian ambitions in Greece. Despite these setbacks, the Persian Empire continued to thrive for several decades. However, internal strife, dynastic struggles, and a shifting balance of power weakened the empire over time. In 334 BCE, Alexander the Great, with his unparalleled military prowess, launched a campaign against Persia that would ultimately lead to the fall of the Achaemenid Empire. His victory at the Battle of Issus and the subsequent fall of Persepolis in 330 BCE sealed the fate of the Persian Empire. Although the Persian Empire fell to Alexander, its legacy endured. Persian culture, administration, and ideas continued to influence the regions that Alexander conquered, shaping the Hellenistic world and leaving an indelible mark on history. The Persian Empire, with its vast scale, innovative governance, and cultural achievements, remains one of the most significant empires in the ancient world. The rise of Greece marks one of the most transformative periods in human history, with Athens emerging as the central hub of a flourishing classical civilization. In the 5th century BCE, Athens rose from the ruins of earlier conflicts to become the beacon of Greek culture, philosophy, and politics. Under the leadership of statesmen like Pericles, Athens not only rebuilt, but began to establish itself as a center of learning, art, and democracy. The city's vibrant intellectual and artistic life, spurred by newfound prosperity, had a profound impact on the Mediterranean world and beyond. At the heart of Athens' rise was the development of democracy. Though the concept of democratic governance had existed in some form in earlier societies, Athens, under Cleisthenes in the late 6th century BCE, created a political system that was unique in its inclusivity and complexity. Unlike previous systems of governance, where power was concentrated in the hands of a few, Athens embraced direct democracy, where citizensmen who were born in Athens and met certain qualifications could vote on laws and policies. The idea that ordinary citizens could have a direct role in governing their society was revolutionary and laid the foundation for future political systems around the world. As Athens reached its peak, it became a vibrant intellectual center, home to some of history's most influential thinkers. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, three of the most famous figures in philosophy, shaped the intellectual landscape of the city and set the stage for Western thought. Socrates, known for his method of questioning and dialogue, challenged conventional wisdom, urging his fellow citizens to examine their lives and values critically. His teachings, though controversial and ultimately leading to his execution, sparked a new wave of philosophical inquiry. Plato, one of Socrates' disciples, took his teacher's ideas and expanded them into a comprehensive system of philosophy. His dialogues, most notably The Republic, explored the nature of justice, the ideal state, and the philosopher, king. Plato's Academy, the first institution of higher learning in the Western world, became a major intellectual force in Athens and attracted students from across the Greek world. Aristotle, Plato's student, went on to become one of the most influential philosophers in history. His work spanned numerous fields, including logic, ethics, politics, and natural sciences. Aristotle's method of observation and categorization laid the groundwork for modern science and philosophy, and his political theories, particularly his ideas about the role of the middle class in maintaining a balanced government, continue to influence political thought to this day. While Athens thrived as a cultural and intellectual capital, it was not without its challenges. The city's growing power led to conflicts with other Greek city-states, most notably Sparta. The Peloponnesian War, a brutal and protracted conflict, eventually weakened Athens and marked the end of its golden age. Despite its decline, the legacy of Athens's political ideas, artistic achievements, and philosophical contributions had an enduring impact on the development of Western civilization, shaping the course of history for centuries to come. The Hellenistic period, which followed the conquests of Alexander the Great, marks a time of profound cultural exchange and transformation across much of the ancient world. Alexander's military genius and ambition led to the unification of an extensive empire that stretched from Greece to Egypt, Persia, and into India. His campaigns not only reshaped the political landscape of the known world, but also set in motion the blending of Greek and Eastern traditions that would define the Hellenistic era. After Alexander's death in 323 BCE, his vast empire was divided among his generals, who established their own dynasties in the territories they controlled. These successor kingdoms, such as the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, the Seleucid Empire in the Near East, and the Antigonid dynasty in Macedonia, became centers of Greek influence. The Greek language, arts, philosophy, and political systems spread throughout these regions, merging with local customs and traditions. This process, known as Hellenization, led to a unique fusion of Greek and Eastern cultures that left a lasting legacy. In cities like Alexandria, Antioch, and Pergamon, Greek culture flourished alongside Egyptian, Persian, and Indian influences. The city of Alexandria, in particular, became a symbol of the Hellenistic world, a hub of intellectual and cultural activity. It was home to the Great Library of Alexandria, the largest and most significant library of the ancient world, where scholars from various parts of the empire gathered to study and exchange ideas. The city also became a melting pot of diverse cultures, as Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, and other traditions coexisted and influenced one another. The Hellenistic period was not just a time of political and cultural merging, it was also a time of extraordinary artistic and scientific achievements. Greek art evolved, incorporating elements from the East, resulting in more naturalistic and emotional depictions of the human form. Sculptures like the Laocoön and the Winged Victory of Samothrace exemplified this new style, emphasizing movement, emotion, and dramatic expression. Hellenistic artists also introduced advances in architecture and urban planning, designing cities that were more organized and cosmopolitan than ever before. Meanwhile, in the realms of science and philosophy, the Hellenistic period saw significant progress. Thinkers like Euclid, Archimedes, and Eratosthenes made groundbreaking contributions to mathematics, physics, and astronomy. The blending of Greek intellectual traditions with Egyptian and Mesopotamian knowledge led to advances in fields such as medicine, engineering, and geography. Philosophical schools like Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium, and Epicureanism, founded by Epicurus, gained widespread popularity, offering new approaches to ethics and the pursuit of happiness. The legacy of the Hellenistic world endures today, as the cultural exchanges and intellectual achievements of this period laid the foundations for much of Western thought. The spread of Greek ideas across such a vast region helped to bridge the gap between East and West, leaving a profound mark on the development of global culture and civilization. The rise of the Roman Republic marks one of the most remarkable transformations in ancient history. Initially founded as a small city-state, Rome's political structure gradually evolved into a republic around the 6th century BCE, marking the beginning of a new era. This period of expansion and political innovation was shaped by a mix of strategic military conquests, social reforms, and an intricate system of governance that became the backbone of Rome's dominance in the ancient world. The Roman Republic was founded on a system of checks and balances, a combination of elected officials, such as consuls and senators, and the rule of law. This framework ensured that no one individual could hold too much power, setting Rome apart from other ancient societies. However, the Republic was not without its struggles. Rome's expansion brought with it internal tensions, particularly between the patricians, the aristocratic ruling class, and the plebeians, the common people. These class divisions led to a series of social wars, with the plebeians demanding more rights and political power, culminating in the creation of the tribunesa position, designed to represent the interests of the plebeians in government. Rome's external conflicts were equally pivotal. The most notable of these were the Punic Wars, a series of 3 wars fought between Rome and the powerful North African city of Carthage. The Punic Wars were crucial in determining Rome's future. The First Punic War, 264–241 BCE, was fought primarily over control of the Mediterranean islands, with Rome emerging victorious after a long and costly naval conflict. The Second Punic War, 218–201 BCE, is often remembered for the Carthaginian general Hannibal's audacious march across the Alps with his elephants. Despite Hannibal's successes in battle, Rome's resilience and strategic leadership, particularly under Scipio Africanus, led to a decisive victory. The Third Punic War, 149–146 BCE, resulted in the complete destruction of Carthage, solidifying Rome's dominance over the Western Mediterranean. As Rome expanded its territory, it also developed a legal system that would later influence much of Western civilization. The 12 Tables, created in the mid-5th century BCE, represented Rome's first codified laws, which were publicly displayed and applied equally to both patricians and plebeians. This development laid the groundwork for Roman law, which would continue to evolve and become one of Rome's most enduring contributions to the world. Throughout its Republican era, Rome expanded its influence through a combination of military prowess, strategic alliances, and the granting of citizenship to conquered peoples, which helped to integrate them into the Roman system. By the 1st century BCE, Rome controlled vast territories across the Mediterranean, from Spain to Asia Minor. However, this growth would eventually sow the seeds of internal conflict as ambitious generals and politicians sought greater power, setting the stage for the eventual transition from republic to empire. The Roman Republic, with its complex political system, military innovations, and legal advancements, left a legacy that shaped not only the history of Rome, but also the future of governance, law, and warfare in the Western world. Julius Caesar's rise to power marked the beginning of the end for the Roman Republic. His journey from a military general to the central figure in Roman politics began with his remarkable conquests, most notably his campaigns in Gaul, which extended Rome's territory to the Atlantic Ocean. His victories brought him immense wealth, political influence, and a loyal army, all of which he used to challenge the power structures of the Roman Senate and the traditional republican system. In 49 BCE, Caesar's decision to cross the Rubicon River with his army an act that defied the Senate's orders was a pivotal moment in Roman history. The phrase, crossing the Rubicon, has since become synonymous with a point of no return, symbolizing Caesar's choice to take up arms against his own government. This bold move set in motion a civil war between Caesar's forces and those loyal to Pompey, his former ally turned rival. The war ended with Caesar's victory and Pompey's death, leaving Caesar as the uncontested ruler of Rome. Once in power, Caesar implemented sweeping reforms across the Roman world. He expanded the Senate, restructured the calendar, and pushed forward various social, economic, and political changes designed to stabilize Rome and address its growing issues. His actions, however, alienated many traditionalists within the Senate, who saw his reforms as a threat to their power. Caesar's centralization of authority, along with his increasingly authoritarian rule, led many to believe that he sought to crown himself king, a notion that was anathema to Roman ideals of republican governance. Caesar's growing influence did not go unchallenged. On the Ides of March in 44 BCE, a group of senators, including some of his closest allies, assassinated him in a dramatic attempt to restore the authority of the Senate and preserve the Republic. The assassination, however, did not bring the hoped-for stability. Instead, it plunged Rome into another round of civil conflict, as power struggles erupted among those vying for control of the state. Caesar's assassination left a power vacuum, leading to the rise of his adopted heir, Octavian, and the eventual defeat of his assassins. The period following Caesar's death saw the unraveling of the Roman Republic. His assassination, intended to preserve the Republic, instead hastened its decline. Octavian, later known as Augustus, emerged victorious from the ensuing conflicts, ultimately establishing himself as the first Roman emperor. The power struggles that followed Caesar's death only cemented the transition from a republic, with its complex system of checks and balances, to an empire with a single ruler at its helm. Caesar's legacy, marked by his ambition, military genius, and political reforms, would have a profound and lasting impact on Rome. His actions not only transformed the structure of Roman government, but also paved the way for the imperial era, reshaping the course of Roman history and the Western world for centuries to come. The ascension of Augustus Caesar marked the beginning of a new era for Rome. Following the chaotic and violent aftermath of Julius Caesar's assassination, Augustus, known then as Octavian, emerged victorious in the civil wars that followed. He skillfully outmaneuvered his rivals, including Mark Antony, and consolidated his power, becoming the first emperor of Rome in 27 BCE. Augustus cleverly presented his rule as a restoration of the Roman Republic, though in reality he held absolute power, effectively ending the republican system. Under Augustus, Rome saw a period of relative peace and stability, known as the Pax Romana, which lasted for over 2 centuries. This era allowed trade, culture, and infrastructure to flourish across the vast Roman Empire. The Pax Romana not only provided stability to Rome, but also brought prosperity to its provinces, encouraging economic growth and the exchange of goods and ideas from one end of the empire to the other. The Mediterranean became a thriving network of trade, and the safety provided by Roman military power ensured that goods, people, and culture flowed freely. One of Augustus's greatest achievements was his transformation of Rome itself. He famously declared that he had found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble. Augustus implemented an ambitious building program that included the construction of temples, theatres, and monumental structures. Among his most notable projects were the rebuilding of the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill and the expansion of the Roman Forum. His reign also saw the development of the first official road system, a network of over 50 miles of roads that connected all corners of the empire, facilitating both trade and military movement. Roman engineering and architecture reached new heights during Augustus's reign. The development of Roman concrete allowed for the construction of larger and more durable buildings, while innovations in arches and vaults led to the creation of iconic structures such as the Pantheon, whose dome remains the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. The Roman road system was also a marvel of engineering, with meticulously planned routes and bridges that not only made transportation more efficient, but also served as a symbol of Roman unity and power. Augustus also established a professional standing army, which secured the borders of the empire and further enabled the empire's expansion. His reforms to the military and the creation of the Praetorian Guard, an elite unit tasked with protecting the emperor, ensured his control over the empire. Alongside military reforms, Augustus improved the administration of Rome by establishing a system of taxation, governing provinces, and appointing officials who ensured the efficient running of the empire. Augustus's reign solidified the foundation of the Roman Empire. His legacy endured far beyond his death, as he set the tone for future emperors and established the mechanisms of power that would sustain Rome for centuries. Under his leadership, Rome transformed from a republic on the verge of collapse into the world's most powerful empire, forever altering the course of history. Christianity emerged in the Roman Empire as a small, obscure sect within the vast mosaic of religious traditions practiced across the empire. Its roots trace back to the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, a Jewish preacher who, during his lifetime, emphasized love, compassion, and repentance. His message, which focused on the coming of God's kingdom and the salvation of the soul, resonated with many in a society weary of political strife and spiritual emptiness. After his crucifixion around 30 CE, his followers, led by apostles such as Peter and Paul, spread his teachings throughout Judea and beyond, encountering resistance but also gaining converts across the empire. For the first few centuries, Christianity remained a persecuted religion. Roman authorities, wary of its monotheistic beliefs and the exclusive loyalty it demanded to one God, viewed the Christians as subversive. They were often accused of undermining the traditional Roman religion, which involved the worship of multiple gods and the emperor himself as a divine figure. Christians refused to worship the emperor, which was seen as a challenge to imperial authority and social order. As a result, they faced violent persecutions, most famously under emperors such as Nero and Diocletian, who ordered mass executions, tortures, and exile for many Christians. The persecutions, however, only fueled the growth of Christianity, as many viewed the willingness of Christians to suffer for their faith as a testament to the strength and truth of their beliefs. Despite the harsh treatment, Christianity continued to spread. In part, the widespread Roman infrastructure, including roads and trade routes, helped the message travel far and wide, reaching all corners of the empire. Additionally, the Christian emphasis on charity, care for the poor, and the promise of eternal life attracted people from all social strata, particularly those oppressed by the Roman system. By the early 4th century, Christianity had spread to every corner of the Roman world, with substantial communities in major cities like Alexandria, Antioch, and Rome itself. The pivotal moment for Christianity came with the rise of Emperor Constantine. In 312 CE, Constantine, preparing for battle against his rival Maxentius, reportedly saw a vision of a Christian symbol in the sky and heard a divine message. In this sign, conquer. Constantine, a follower of the traditional Roman gods up until this point, took this as a sign to adopt Christianity. After his victory at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, he attributed his success to the Christian God and began to advocate for religious tolerance. In 313 CE, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which legalized Christianity and granted it the same rights as traditional Roman religions. This marked the end of official persecution. Constantine's influence on Christianity did not stop with legalization. As the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity, he became a major patron of the faith. He convened the First Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, which aimed to resolve theological disputes and create a unified Christian doctrine. Constantine also provided financial support for the building of churches and gave Christians key positions within the imperial bureaucracy. Over time, his policies helped Christianity transition from a persecuted minority religion to the dominant faith of the Roman Empire. By the time of his death in 337 CE, Constantine had established Christianity as the central institution within Roman society. What began as a small, persecuted sect had grown into the official religion of the Roman Empire, reshaping the course of Western history. The decline of the Roman Empire was a gradual and multifaceted process, marked by a complex interplay of military, economic, and political challenges. For centuries, Rome had been the dominant power in the Mediterranean, but as the empire expanded, its ability to maintain control over such vast territories began to erode. By the 3rd century CE, the empire faced increasing threats from external invaders and internal instability, setting the stage for its eventual collapse. One of the most significant challenges Rome faced was the pressure of constant military conflicts. The empire's borders were repeatedly tested by Germanic tribes, Huns, and Persian forces. These external threats stretched the Roman military thin, forcing the empire to rely more heavily on mercenaries and non-Roman soldiers. While these mercenaries were often skilled, they lacked the loyalty and discipline of Roman legions. In addition, the Roman army was becoming increasingly ineffective as the empire's leadership became divided and its military strategy fragmented. Economically, the empire struggled under the weight of constant warfare, high taxation, and inflation. The vast resources that once supported the empire were slowly drained by military expenditures and the declining productivity of agricultural lands. The empire's economic infrastructure began to deteriorate, and the gap between the wealthy elite and the poor grew wider. Urban centers, once the heart of Roman civilization, saw increasing poverty and depopulation as people fled to the countryside in search of safety and stability. The devaluation of Roman currency further exacerbated the economic crisis, undermining trade and reducing the state's ability to fund its military. Politically, the empire suffered from a lack of strong leadership. Emperors, often more concerned with securing their own power than addressing the empire's issues, were frequently overthrown or assassinated. The frequent turnover of leaders created instability, making it difficult to implement consistent policies. Furthermore, the size of the empire made it increasingly difficult to govern effectively. In 285 CE, Emperor Diocletian attempted to address this by dividing the empire into 2 halves: the Western Roman Empire, with its capital in Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire, based in Byzantium. This division was meant to streamline administration, but it also led to a growing rift between the 2 halves, with the West facing more immediate threats from barbarian invasions and internal decay. By the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire was crumbling under the weight of these pressures. In 476 CE, the last Roman emperor in the West, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer, marking the official fall of Rome. The Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, would continue for nearly another 1,000 years, but the western half had irrevocably fallen. The fall of Rome was not a sudden event, but rather the culmination of centuries of decline, signaling the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter in world history. The legacy of Rome, however, would live on through its cultural, legal, and architectural contributions, which continued to influence the civilizations that followed. The Byzantine Empire, the continuation of the Eastern Roman Empire, endured for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of Rome in 476 AD. Centered in Constantinople, the empire represented a fusion of Roman governance and Greek culture, with a strong Christian influence that shaped its identity. While the Western Roman Empire crumbled under external pressures, the Eastern Empire found a new strength, maintaining its political, economic, and military prominence for centuries. One of the most notable figures in Byzantine history was Emperor Justinian I, who ruled from 527 to 565 AD. His reign marked a high point in the empire's power and influence. Justinian sought to restore the lost territories of the Western Roman Empire, launching military campaigns in North Africa, Italy, and Spain. Although his wars were costly, they temporarily expanded the Byzantine Empire's borders, reviving the concept of Roman grandeur. Justinian is perhaps best known for his legal reforms, most notably the creation of the Corpus Juris Civilis, or body of civil law. This comprehensive legal code, which systematized Roman law, became the foundation of legal systems in many European nations for centuries to come. Justinian's reign also saw the construction of the Hagia Sophia, an architectural marvel and symbol of Byzantine grandeur. The cathedral's immense dome, intricate mosaics, and vast interior highlighted the empire's cultural and religious significance, marking Constantinople as a center of Christian faith and art. However, despite its initial strength, the Byzantine Empire faced numerous challenges in the centuries that followed. The constant threat from neighboring empires, such as the Persians and later the Seljuk Turks, destabilized the region. The empire's economic base eroded as it struggled to maintain control over its expansive territories, which were often subject to invasions or rebellions. Additionally, the rise of Islam in the 7th century significantly impacted the empire. The Arabs captured large portions of Byzantine territory in the Middle East, North Africa, and Spain, diminishing the empire's power and wealth. In the 11th and 12th centuries, the Byzantine Empire began to experience internal fragmentation and external pressure. The Fourth Crusade in 1204, a misguided military expedition intended to reclaim Jerusalem, resulted in the sack of Constantinople. The city was plundered and occupied by the Crusaders, leaving the empire weakened and divided. Though the Byzantines regained control of Constantinople in 1261, the empire never fully recovered from the damage inflicted during the Crusades. By the 15th century, the Byzantine Empire was reduced to a shadow of its former self, with Constantinople surrounded by powerful forces. The final blow came in 1453, when the Ottoman Turks, under Sultan Mehmed II, besieged and captured the city. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of the Byzantine Empire and the conclusion of the Roman Empire's legacy. Despite its decline, the Byzantine Empire's contributions to law, architecture, and culture left an indelible mark on the world, influencing the development of both the Renaissance in Europe and the broader Christian world. The rise of Islam in the 7th century marked one of the most transformative periods in world history. Born in the Arabian Peninsula under the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, Islam spread rapidly, reshaping the political, cultural, and religious landscape of the Middle East and beyond. Muhammad, born in Mecca in 570 CE, began receiving revelations from God at the age of 40, which were later compiled into the Quran, the holy book of Islam. These teachings emphasized monotheism, social justice, and compassion, challenging the polytheistic and tribal structures that dominated the Arabian society at the time. In 622 CE, Muhammad and his followers migrated from Mecca to Medina in an event known as the Hijra, which marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. Over the next decade, Islam not only gained followers but also emerged as a political force. Muhammad's leadership united the Arab tribes under the banner of Islam, and by the time of his death in 632 CE, the religion had spread across much of the Arabian Peninsula. His successors, known as caliphs, continued to expand the Muslim empire, ushering in a period of rapid conquest. The spread of Islam was swift and far-reaching, stretching across the Middle East, North Africa, and into parts of Europe. The Umayyad and Abbasid caliphates, the two major Islamic dynasties, governed vast territories and encouraged the spread of Islamic culture, law, and education. In just a few centuries, Muslim armies conquered significant parts of the Byzantine and Sasanian empires, including the regions of Syria, Egypt, and Persia. By the 8th century, Islam had reached Spain in the west and India in the east, establishing a global presence. Alongside its territorial expansion, the Islamic world experienced a remarkable cultural and intellectual flourishing, known as the Islamic Golden Age, which spanned roughly from the 8th to the 14th century. During this period, scholars in the Islamic world made groundbreaking advancements in science, mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. The preservation and expansion of ancient Greek, Roman, and Persian knowledge played a significant role in this intellectual boom. Works of Aristotle, Galen, and Ptolemy were translated into Arabic, and Muslim scholars built upon these foundations, making significant contributions in fields such as algebra, chemistry, and optics. Figures like Al-Khwarizmi, whose work in algebra and algorithms laid the groundwork for modern mathematics, and Ibn Sina, whose medical writings became central texts in European universities, epitomize the intellectual vitality of this era. The Islamic Golden Age also saw the construction of iconic architectural structures, such as the Alhambra in Spain and the Great Mosque of Samarra in Iraq. Islamic art, with its intricate geometric designs and calligraphy, flourished as a distinctive cultural expression, blending Persian, Byzantine, and Arab traditions. Philosophy and theology also prospered, with thinkers like Al-Farabi, Avicenna, and Averroes, seeking to reconcile Greek philosophy with Islamic thought. However, the period of Islamic dominance was not without its challenges. Political fragmentation, invasions from the Mongols, and the rise of the Ottoman Empire eventually shifted the balance of power in the Islamic world. Despite these challenges, the legacy of the Islamic Golden Age continues to shape modern science, medicine, and philosophy, reflecting the enduring influence of Islam on global civilization. The fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD marked the beginning of a new and tumultuous era in European history, often referred to as the medieval period. The collapse of Rome left a vacuum in the political and social structures of Europe, leading to a fragmentation of power. As the central authority crumbled, the once united Roman territories splintered into smaller, often warring, kingdoms. This period, sometimes called the Dark Ages, was defined by political instability, invasions, and the struggle for survival. Despite these hardships, it was also a time of significant social and cultural transformation. One of the most prominent developments of this time was the rise of feudalism, a system that dominated the political and economic life of medieval Europe. Feudalism was built on a rigid hierarchy, where land was the central currency. Kings granted land to nobles in exchange for loyalty and military service, while peasants, or serfs, worked the land in return for protection. This system created a decentralized structure where local lords held more power than distant kings. Though feudalism brought stability to local communities, it also created a fragmented political landscape, with power often in the hands of a few wealthy landowners. At the same time, Christianity played a central role in shaping the medieval world. The Christian Church, once a persecuted faith under Roman rule, became the unifying force across Europe. As the Roman Empire declined, the Church, led by the Pope in Rome, grew in both spiritual and political power. It provided stability and guidance in an era marked by chaos and uncertainty. Monasteries became centers of learning, preserving ancient texts and knowledge that would later fuel the intellectual revival of the Renaissance. Christianity also provided a moral framework for medieval society, influencing everything from law to art. The spread of Christianity was not just a spiritual phenomenon, it was also a political one. The Church often acted as an intermediary between rulers and their subjects, providing legitimacy to kings and emperors. The Holy Roman Empire, for example, emerged as a political entity during the medieval period. Formed in 800 AD, when Charlemagne was crowned emperor by the Pope, the Holy Roman Empire sought to revive the grandeur of the Roman Empire in the West. Though it never fully recaptured the power or unity of Rome, it became a dominant force in Europe for centuries, shaping the political landscape of the medieval world. As the medieval kingdoms developed, the idea of monarchy became more firmly established. The feudal system allowed monarchs to exert control over vast territories, but their power was often contested by local nobles and the church. Despite these challenges, the medieval period laid the foundations for the rise of powerful European kingdoms, including France, England, and Spain, which would eventually shape the course of European history for centuries to come. In the midst of these political and religious developments, the medieval world saw advancements in agriculture, architecture, and trade. Castles, cathedrals, and towns began to dot the European landscape, and trade routes slowly reopened, connecting the East and West. These changes set the stage for the eventual resurgence of learning and culture in the later Middle Ages, leading into the Renaissance. The Crusades were a series of religious wars launched by Christian forces in Europe, aimed at recapturing Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim rule. Beginning in 1096 with Pope Urban II's call to arms, the Crusades were seen as both a religious duty and an opportunity for political and territorial expansion. The underlying motivation was the belief that Jerusalem, the site of Christ's crucifixion, should be under Christian control. The religious fervor of the times, coupled with the desire for wealth and land, spurred thousands of knights, peasants, and adventurers to embark on these dangerous journeys to the east. The First Crusade, launched in 1096, was the most successful for the Christians. After a long and brutal campaign, they captured Jerusalem in 1099, establishing several Christian kingdoms in the Levant, most notably the Kingdom of Jerusalem. This victory, however, was marred by the violence and destruction that followed, as Christian forces massacred both Muslims and Jews in the city. Despite the initial success, the Crusaders were constantly under threat from Muslim forces who sought to reclaim the land. The subsequent Crusades, over the next 2 centuries, were less successful. The Second Crusade, launched in 1147, aimed to reinforce the Christian presence in the Holy Land, but ended in failure. The Third Crusade, led by Richard the Lionheart, was marked by the famous rivalry between Richard and the Muslim leader, Saladin. While Richard achieved some victories, he was unable to recapture Jerusalem, which had been lost to Saladin in 1187. The Crusaders did, however, secure important coastal cities, and the Treaty of Jaffa in 1192 allowed Christian pilgrims to visit Jerusalem under Muslim control. The Fourth Crusade, which began in 1202, took an unexpected turn when Crusader forces, diverted by Venetian merchants, ended up sacking Constantinople, the Christian capital of the Byzantine Empire, in 1204. This betrayal weakened the Byzantine Empire, and the Crusaders' focus shifted from the Holy Land to political and economic gain. Abandoning their original mission, the Crusades had a profound impact on both Europe and the Middle East. In Europe, they contributed to the growth of a merchant class, as the need for supplies and trade routes expanded. Contact with the Muslim world brought new ideas, technologies, and goods to Europe, stimulating the economy and sparking intellectual and cultural exchanges. However, the Crusades also deepened the divisions between Christians and Muslims, leaving a legacy of distrust and animosity that would shape relations between the two for centuries. Despite the initial successes, the Crusades ultimately failed in their primary objective, the permanent capture of Jerusalem. By the late 13th century, Christian control of the Holy Land was virtually gone, and the Crusades became increasingly viewed as futile. The failure to reclaim Jerusalem marked the end of the crusading era, but the ripple effects of these wars would continue to influence European politics, religion, and culture long after the last Crusader stronghold fell. The Viking Age, stretching from the late 8th century to the early 11th century, marked a period of profound change in Europe. Originating from the Scandinavian lands of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, the Vikings were initially known for their fearsome raids along the coasts of Europe. These seafaring warriors, equipped with longships that were both fast and agile, struck terror into the hearts of coastal communities. The Vikings targeted monasteries, villages, and cities, drawn by the promise of wealth and resources. The first recorded raid occurred in 793 at the Lindisfarne Monastery, an event that set the tone for decades of Viking activity across the continent. As the Vikings expanded their raids, they also began to settle in the lands they had plundered. They established colonies in the British Isles, Ireland, and parts of Francia, modern-day France. In the British Isles, the Viking presence was particularly strong in areas like Northumbria, East Anglia, and later, Dublin, where they created a thriving trade hub. The Vikings' ability to adapt to different environments and integrate with local populations allowed them to build settlements that lasted well beyond their initial raids. Over time, many Vikings assimilated into the local cultures, taking on the language, customs, and governance of the regions they occupied. In addition to their European ventures, the Vikings made a remarkable journey across the Atlantic, reaching North America nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Led by Leif Erikson, the Vikings sailed westward from Greenland and landed in what is now Newfoundland, Canada. This settlement, known as Vinland, was short-lived, but it stands as a testament to the Vikings' maritime expertise and their desire to explore and expand beyond the known world. The Vikings also made their mark through trade. The extensive network of routes they established stretched from the British Isles to the Byzantine Empire and even as far as the Islamic world. Viking traders brought furs, slaves, and amber, while importing luxury goods, coins, and silks. This trade fostered cultural exchange and played a significant role in the economic development of Northern Europe. In many ways, the Vikings were as much traders as they were raiders, and their presence in Europe facilitated the growth of a connected, thriving medieval economy. By the 11th century, the Viking Age began to wind down. The kingdoms of Europe, particularly England, had developed stronger defences and unified leadership to counter the Viking threat. In addition, many Vikings had settled in the lands they had previously raided, becoming integral parts of the societies they once attacked. They adopted Christianity, took on local customs, and eventually formed the roots of several European dynasties, including those of Normandy and England. The Viking Age, which began with violent raids, ended with the assimilation and integration of the Vikings into the fabric of European civilization, leaving behind a lasting legacy in the form of cultural exchange, exploration, and the reshaping of medieval Europe. The Renaissance, which began in the 14th century and flourished through the 15th century, was a period of profound cultural transformation in Europe. This era marked a rebirth of interest in the classical art, philosophy, and literature of ancient Greece and Rome. After the relative stagnation of the Middle Ages, Europe saw a renewed engagement with learning, creativity, and exploration. It was a time when the boundaries of knowledge expanded dramatically and the potential of human achievement seemed limitless. Central to the Renaissance was the rise of humanism, a philosophical movement that emphasized the value of human experience and reason. Humanists believed that by studying classical texts and focusing on the potential of the individual, they could improve society and encourage a more enlightened approach to life. This new way of thinking extended beyond academics to every corner of culture, influencing art, politics, literature, and science. It encouraged an emphasis on realism and perspective in painting, as well as the exploration of nature and the human condition in art and literature. In the world of art, the Renaissance produced some of the most iconic works in history. Figures like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael brought new depth and expression to painting and sculpture. Da Vinci's Mona Lisa and The Last Supper redefined portraiture and religious art, offering both emotional depth and realism. Michelangelo's David and the Sistine Chapel ceiling, painted with the help of his brilliant genius, elevated sculpture and fresco painting to a level of mastery never before seen. Raphael, known for his serene and balanced compositions, contributed works like The School of Athens, which celebrated the fusion of classical knowledge and Renaissance ideals. This period also witnessed remarkable advances in science and thought, largely due to the works of individuals who dared to challenge established beliefs. Galileo Galilei, for example, became one of the founding figures of modern science. His telescopic observations changed the way humanity viewed the universe, directly challenging the geocentric models that had dominated thought for centuries. Galileo's discoveries laid the foundation for the scientific revolution, an essential part of the intellectual currents of the Renaissance. The Renaissance was not limited to Italy, though it began there. It spread across Europe, influencing countries like France, England, and the Netherlands. In Northern Europe, the Flemish painter Jan van Eyck advanced oil painting techniques, while writers like Geoffrey Chaucer and Erasmus emphasized the importance of vernacular language and humanist ideals. The printing press, invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century, further amplified the Renaissance's spread by allowing ideas to be disseminated quickly and widely. In many ways, the Renaissance set the stage for the modern world. It fostered a belief in the potential of the individual, the importance of reason, and the necessity of questioning old assumptions. The period redefined art, literature, and science, and its legacy can still be seen today in the continued pursuit of knowledge and creativity. The Renaissance began as a spark, but it ignited a fire that would burn brightly for centuries, shaping the course of Western civilization. The Age of Exploration, spanning roughly from the 15th to the 17th centuries, marked one of the most transformative periods in world history. It was a time when European powers, driven by curiosity, ambition, and the search for wealth, ventured beyond their borders into unknown territories. This era saw some of the most legendary voyages of discovery, which fundamentally reshaped the global landscape. At the heart of this age were explorers like Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Ferdinand Magellan, whose voyages expanded the horizons of the known world. Columbus, sponsored by Spain, set sail in 1492, seeking a westward route to Asia, but instead stumbled upon the islands of the Caribbean, unwittingly opening the Americas to European exploration. His discovery paved the way for the colonization of the New World, with Spain and Portugal establishing vast empires in the Americas, fueled by the promise of riches from gold, silver, and other resources. Meanwhile, Vasco da Gama's pioneering sea route to India in 1498 was equally significant. Sailing around the southern tip of Africa, he established a sea link between Europe and Asia, enabling Portugal to set up lucrative trading posts in India and the Far East. This marked the beginning of European dominance in global trade, as Portugal and Spain became the leading maritime powers. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition, which began in 1519, was another key event in this period. Though Magellan himself did not survive the journey, his fleet became the first to circumnavigate the globe, proving definitively that the Earth was round and that the world was much larger and more interconnected than anyone had imagined. His voyage, sponsored by Spain, opened up further possibilities for global exploration and laid the groundwork for future European dominance over the world's seas. These voyages of discovery not only brought new lands under European control, but also led to the establishment of the first true colonial empires. Spain and Portugal were the earliest to claim vast territories in the Americas, Africa, and Asia, setting the stage for competition with other European powers like France, England, and the Netherlands. These empires were built on the exploitation of resources and labor, particularly through the use of enslaved indigenous people and Africans, which had profound consequences for the native populations. The impact of exploration extended far beyond territorial expansion. The exchange of goods, ideas, and culture swap became known as the Columbian Exchange, transformed the world. New crops and animals were introduced to different continents, changing diets and agricultural practices worldwide. For example, maize, potatoes, and tomatoes, originally from the Americas, became staple foods in Europe and Asia, while horses, cattle, and sugar were introduced to the New World. This exchange, however, was not without its darker side, as the forced movement of people, particularly slaves, resulted in immense suffering and death. Trade networks flourished as a result of these explorations, linking distant parts of the world like never before. European powers established trading posts and colonies that connected the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia, creating a global economy based on the exchange of goods, raw materials, and human labor. The rise of global trade led to the wealth and power of European empires, but it also laid the foundations for the exploitation and inequalities that would mark the modern world. The age of exploration was a pivotal chapter in world history, setting the stage for the emergence of a truly interconnected world. It was a time of incredible discovery, but also one of profound consequences. As the effects of these voyages continue to echo throughout history, the scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries was a period of profound change in the way humanity understood the natural world. It marked a decisive break from centuries of reliance on religious and superstitious explanations of natural phenomena, paving the way for a new framework based on observation, experimentation, and reason. This intellectual shift set the stage for modern science, transforming not only the fields of astronomy, physics, and biology, but also the very way society approached knowledge. At the heart of this revolution were pioneering figures such as Nicolaus Copernicus, Johannes Kepler, Galileo Galilei, and Isaac Newton, whose groundbreaking ideas laid the foundations for the scientific method. Copernicus, a Polish mathematician and astronomer, was one of the first to challenge the long-held belief that the Earth was the center of the universe. In his work De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, on the revolutions of the celestial spheres, published in 1543, he proposed the heliocentric model, which placed the Sun at the center of the universe. Although controversial at the time, his ideas eventually revolutionized astronomy, altering the course of human understanding of our place in the cosmos. Following Copernicus, Kepler, a German astronomer, advanced the heliocentric theory by formulating his laws of planetary motion. Kepler's meticulous observations of planetary orbits, particularly his discovery that planets move in elliptical rather than circular orbits, provided a more accurate model of the solar system. His work built upon the ideas of Copernicus and helped to further disprove the ancient geocentric model, reinforcing the shift toward a more empirical and mathematically grounded view of the universe. Galileo Galilei, an Italian physicist and astronomer, played a key role in popularizing the scientific method and advancing the study of motion and celestial bodies. Galileo's use of the telescope to observe the Moon, Jupiter's moons, and the phases of Venus provided compelling evidence for the heliocentric theory, challenging the traditional Aristotelian view of the universe. His advocacy for observation and experimentation in science, along with his support of Copernican theory, led to conflict with the Catholic Church, which sought to uphold the geocentric model. Despite facing inquisition and house arrest, Galileo's contributions to science were immense, solidifying his place as one of the key figures of the scientific revolution. However, it was Isaac Newton, an English mathematician and physicist, who synthesized the findings of his predecessors and created a comprehensive framework that unified the understanding of motion and gravity. In his landmark work, Principia Mathematica, 1687, Newton formulated the laws of motion and universal gravitation, explaining the mechanics of celestial bodies and earthly objects with unprecedented clarity. Newton's laws provided a mathematical explanation for the movements of planets and laid the groundwork for classical physics, ushering in an era of scientific discovery that would shape the modern world. The scientific revolution marked the beginning of a dramatic shift in intellectual thought. The emphasis on empirical observation, experimentation, and the scientific method challenged traditional authority and laid the foundation for the Enlightenment. It also set in motion the development of technologies and innovations that would change the world, from advances in medicine and engineering to the rise of the industrial age. The work of Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, and Newton opened up a new understanding of the natural world, one driven by evidence and reason rather than tradition and superstition. The Enlightenment, spanning the late 17th and 18th centuries, was a profound intellectual movement that reshaped the landscape of philosophy, politics, and society. It was marked by a shift toward reason, individualism, and a commitment to liberty, challenging centuries of tradition and authority. Enlightenment thinkers sought to apply the principles of reason and empirical thought to all areas of life, from government and religion to human rights and social organization. Their ideas would not only inspire revolutions but also lay the groundwork for modern democratic societies. Philosophers like Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Montesquieu played pivotal roles in shaping the Enlightenment. Voltaire, a French writer and satirist, fiercely criticized religious dogma, political corruption, and social injustice. His advocacy for freedom of speech, separation of church and state, and individual rights made him one of the most vocal proponents of Enlightenment thought. Through his works, such as Candide, he challenged the established order and pushed for reforms that would protect personal liberties and promote rational governance. Rousseau, another central figure, offered a different perspective on society and governance. In The Social Contract, Rousseau famously declared that man is born free and everywhere he is in chains. He argued that legitimate political authority comes from a social contract agreed upon by the people, emphasizing the importance of collective sovereignty and direct democracy. Rousseau's ideas deeply influenced revolutionary movements, particularly in France, where they inspired calls for liberty, equality, and fraternity. Montesquieu, a French political philosopher, brought a crucial insight into the structure of government in his work, The Spirit of the Laws. He advocated for the separation of powers within government executive, legislative, and judicial in order to prevent any single entity from gaining too much power. Montesquieu's ideas on checks and balances became a cornerstone in the creation of modern democratic institutions, influencing the design of the U.S. Constitution and shaping the development of democratic governance worldwide. The Enlightenment also saw the development of new ideas about human nature and society. Thinkers emphasized the importance of education, the pursuit of happiness, and the role of reason in human affairs. Philosophers began to question traditional religious beliefs, advocating for secularism and tolerance instead of dogma. The belief that individuals had inherent rights and that governments should be accountable to the people spread across Europe and beyond, igniting movements for political reform. These Enlightenment ideas resonated far beyond the salons and academic circles of Europe. They influenced revolutionary movements across the Atlantic, most notably the American Revolution of 1776, which was deeply shaped by Enlightenment principles of liberty and the right to self-government. Similarly, the French Revolution of 1789 was fueled by the desire to overthrow the old feudal and monarchical structures in favor of a society based on equality, fraternity, and popular sovereignty. The Enlightenment was more than just an intellectual movement. It was a revolution in thought that changed the course of history. Its emphasis on reason, individual rights, and liberty laid the foundation for modern democracies and continues to shape political and social discourse today. The Enlightenment provided a vision of a world governed not by tradition or divine right, but by reason, justice, and the will of the people. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, was a momentous event that reshaped not only France, but the entire course of world history. Rooted in widespread dissatisfaction with the French monarchy, the revolution was fueled by economic hardship, social inequality, and a growing demand for political representation. The French people, particularly the lower classes, were burdened with crippling taxes, famine, and a lack of political power. Meanwhile, the nobility and clergy enjoyed privileges that further deepened the divide between the rich and poor. The Enlightenment ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity also played a key role in inspiring the French to seek change, and the revolution would reflect these ideals in both its aspirations and its violent struggle for reform. The immediate spark of the revolution was the dire economic crisis. France's involvement in the American Revolution, along with lavish spending by King Louis XVI and his court, drained the royal treasury. A series of bad harvests had left much of the population hungry, while the nobility's refusal to pay taxes exacerbated the fiscal crisis. In 1789, the Estates General, a body representing the three estates of the realm, the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners' woes, convened to address the financial woes. However, the third estate, representing the common people, was frustrated by its lack of power and representation. This led to the formation of the National Assembly, a move that marked the beginning of the revolution. As tensions rose, the storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, became a symbolic act of rebellion against the monarchy. The people's victory signaled the end of the old regime, and the French Revolution began in earnest. The National Assembly sought to establish a constitutional monarchy, but this vision was soon overtaken by radical forces. The revolution's early phase gave way to the rise of radical political ideologies, with figures like Maximilien Robespierre and the Jacobins pushing for more aggressive measures. The Reign of Terror, which began in 1793, saw thousands of perceived enemies of the revolution executed, often by the guillotine. It was a period marked by fear, suspicion, and brutal repression, as the revolutionaries sought to protect the revolution from both internal and external enemies. The instability of the revolution eventually paved the way for the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, a military leader who had gained fame for his successes during the revolution's wars. In 1799, Napoleon staged a coup d'état, overthrowing the Directory and establishing himself as first consul. His rise to power brought an end to the revolution's chaotic period, but it also marked the beginning of his own imperial ambitions. Napoleon reformed France, stabilizing the economy, codifying laws in the Napoleonic Code, and consolidating power. However, his expansionist wars across Europe, known as the Napoleonic Wars, would later prove disastrous, leading to his eventual downfall. The French Revolution left a legacy that resonated far beyond France's borders. It ended the old feudal order, replaced the monarchy with republican ideals, and inspired subsequent revolutions around the world. Though the revolution's outcomes were complex and often violent, it set the stage for the rise of modern democracies and the spread of revolutionary ideals across Europe and the Americas. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century in Britain, was a transformative period that changed the course of human history. It marked the shift from agrarian economies based on agriculture and handicrafts to industrial economies driven by mechanized production. This transformation began with innovations in technology, which made mass production possible and drastically increased productivity. The steam engine, invented by James Watt in 1776, became one of the most important symbols of this new age, powering factories, trains, and ships, and laying the foundation for modern industrial society. The rise of factories became one of the defining features of the Industrial Revolution. These factories, which concentrated production in centralized locations, replaced traditional methods of handcrafting goods in homes or small workshops. They attracted workers from rural areas, offering jobs that were often repetitive and labor-intensive, but paid wages that enabled many families to support themselves. The increased demand for goods, such as textiles, coal, and iron, drove the expansion of factories, which were fueled by the new technologies that had revolutionized manufacturing processes. railroads, and steamships played a crucial role in the expansion of industrial economies. They made transportation faster and more efficient, allowing for the movement of raw materials to factories and finished goods to markets far and wide. The railroad networks that spread across Britain and Europe linked distant regions, creating national markets and stimulating economic growth. By the mid-19th century, cities were growing at an unprecedented rate as people moved from the countryside in search of work in the new factories. These rapidly expanding urban areas became hubs of industrial activity, but also faced significant challenges such as overcrowding, poor sanitation, and a lack of infrastructure. The social impacts of industrialization were profound. While factory work offered employment to millions, it also introduced difficult and often dangerous working conditions. Long hours, low wages, and a lack of safety measures were common in early factories. Child labor was widespread as families sought to make ends meet in the face of rising living costs. These harsh conditions led to the rise of labor movements as workers began to demand better pay, shorter hours, and safer working conditions. The first trade unions were formed to protect the rights of workers, and by the late 19th century, significant labor reforms had been implemented in many industrialized nations. The Industrial Revolution also contributed to the growth of capitalism as entrepreneurs and industrialists amassed enormous fortunes, while the gap between the wealthy and the working classes widened. However, industrialization also spurred technological progress and innovation in fields such as medicine, communication, and transportation, laying the groundwork for the modern world. The rapid urbanization and rise of factory-based economies gave rise to new social dynamics, while the relentless drive for progress and efficiency led to innovations that continue to shape society today. Ultimately, the Industrial Revolution reshaped the world, altering economies, societies, and cultures in ways that still resonate. While it brought prosperity to some, it also exposed the deep inequalities within emerging industrial societies, igniting debates that would shape the future of work, class, and social justice. The Victorian era, spanning from 1837 to 1901, marked a period of profound change and transformation, both within Britain and across the globe. Under the long reign of Queen Victoria, Britain emerged as the world's most powerful empire, commanding vast territories across the Americas, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. The British Empire reached its peak during this time, with the famous adage, "The sun never sets on the British Empire," symbolizing its global dominance. This era was defined by the expansion of British influence, the spread of Western ideals, and the profound impact of industrialization. Britain's imperial dominance had far-reaching effects. The empire was a complex web of colonies, protectorates, and dominions, bringing together diverse cultures and peoples under British rule. British control facilitated the spread of Western ideas and institutions, including legal systems, education, and Christianity, across the world. The empire also helped shape global trade networks, with British merchants at the center of a vast system that linked continents and ensured the movement of goods, raw materials, and capital. The economic and political influence of Britain extended far beyond its shores, creating an interconnected world where British interests often held sway. At home, the Victorian era saw Britain undergo rapid modernization. The Industrial Revolution, which had begun earlier in the century, continued to reshape the economy and society. New industries, such as steel, textiles, and coal, flourished, and the rise of railroads and steamships revolutionized transportation, allowing for quicker movement of people and goods across the country. Urbanization skyrocketed as people moved to cities in search of work in factories. However, these changes came with social challenges. The growing divide between the wealthy elite and the impoverished working class was stark, and the era saw both tremendous wealth for some and severe poverty for others. Alongside the economic transformations, the Victorian period was marked by significant advances in science and technology. Figures such as Charles Darwin, who published On the Origin of Species in 1859, revolutionized biology and our understanding of human evolution. The development of new technologies, including the telegraph, photography, and the steam engine, transformed daily life and communication. The era also witnessed advancements in medicine, including the use of anesthesia and antiseptics, which improved the quality of healthcare and extended life expectancy. The Victorian era also saw profound cultural shifts. Social and moral values were central to the period, with an emphasis on propriety, family values, and religious observance. Queen Victoria herself became the symbol of moral virtue and domestic tranquility, and her reign was marked by a strong sense of national pride and optimism. However, beneath the surface, the era was also a time of social unrest. As the working class began to demand better living conditions and political representation, the Victorian period left an indelible mark on the world, shaping modern industrial societies, global trade, and scientific thought. Its legacy is still felt today in the institutions, technologies, and ideologies that emerged during this era, as well as in the contradictions and complexities of an empire that spanned the globe. The World Wars, two of the most devastating conflicts in human history, reshaped the world in profound ways, both politically and socially. World War I, which began in 1914, was the result of a complex web of alliances, militarism, nationalism, and colonial rivalries. The war was primarily fought in Europe, but involved nations from around the globe. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary acted as the spark that ignited the conflict. The war's major battles, such as the Battle of the Somme and Verdun, resulted in staggering casualties, and the introduction of new technologies, like tanks and chemical weapons, made warfare even more brutal. By the time the war ended in 1918, the once great empires of Europe, including the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, German, and Russian empires, had collapsed, and the Treaty of Versailles sought to place the blame on Germany, setting the stage for future unrest. The aftermath of World War I left Europe in ruins, economically devastated and politically unstable. Yet, the repercussions of the conflict would pale in comparison to the global devastation of World War II, which broke out in 1939. The rise of totalitarian regimes in Germany, Italy, and Japan, fueled by economic hardship, nationalist fervor, and expansionist ideologies, was a direct consequence of the failures of the post-World War I settlement. Under Adolf Hitler's leadership, Nazi Germany sought to overturn the Treaty of Versailles, leading to the invasion of Poland, which triggered the start of World War II. Major battles, such as the Battle of Stalingrad, the Day Invasion, and the Pacific Island Hopping Campaign, became pivotal turning points in the conflict. World War II was marked by unprecedented destruction, with an estimated 70 to 85 million people killed, including 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, a genocide orchestrated by Nazi Germany. The war's brutality extended to civilians, with entire cities leveled by bombing raids. The war also introduced new forms of warfare, such as the use of atomic bombs by the United States on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which led to Japan's surrender and the end of the war in 1945. In the wake of World War II, Europe lay in ruins. Entire cities were destroyed, economies were shattered, and the world was faced with the monumental task of rebuilding. The United States, which emerged from the war relatively unscathed, and the Soviet Union, which had suffered tremendous losses but had gained territory, became the two dominant global superpowers. This rivalry set the stage for the Cold War, a period of political tension, military competition, and ideological conflict between the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, led by the Soviet Union. The effects of the world wars were far-reaching. New technologies and ideas emerged from the conflicts, while old empires crumbled. The political landscape of the 20th century was defined by the legacies of these wars, the reshaping of international relations, and the beginning of the modern era of global superpower dynamics. The Cold War was a period of intense ideological, political, and military rivalry that lasted for nearly half a century, shaping much of the 20th century. It emerged from the aftermath of World War II, as the United States and the Soviet Union, the two superpowers that had helped defeat Nazi Germany, became locked in a bitter struggle for global dominance. At its core, the Cold War was a battle between two contrasting ideologies: capitalism, championed by the United States, and communism, led by the Soviet Union. The division was not just political, but deeply ideological, with each side viewing the other as a direct threat to its way of life. The rivalry between the two superpowers was not fought through direct military conflict, but rather through a series of proxy wars, covert operations, and an intense arms race. The United States and the Soviet Union engaged in a race to develop more powerful weapons, including nuclear bombs, leading to the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, MAD. This arms race fueled a constant fear of global annihilation, as both sides amassed vast arsenals of nuclear weapons. With the world constantly on the brink of nuclear war, the space race was another front in this ideological competition, with both superpowers vying to demonstrate the superiority of their systems through technological achievements. The launch of Sputnik by the Soviet Union in 1957 marked the beginning of the space race, and the subsequent US Apollo missions culminated in the historic moon landing in 1969, symbolizing American technological prowess and dominance in space. Meanwhile, the Cold War played out in various parts of the world through proxy wars, where the superpowers supported opposing sides in conflicts to expand their spheres of influence. The Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan were some of the most notable examples of these conflicts. These wars, while never directly involving the US and Soviet forces, were shaped by their support of opposing sides, and millions of lives were lost in the process. The Cold War also saw the division of Europe, most notably symbolized by the Berlin Wall, which separated East and West Berlin, embodying the division between the capitalist West and the communist East. The tension was most palpable in Europe, but the effects of the Cold War spread across the globe, influencing foreign policies, shaping alliances, and leading to economic, social, and political consequences in both the East and West. By the 1980s, however, the Soviet Union began to show signs of decline. Economic stagnation, political repression, and the failure of the communist system led to widespread dissatisfaction within the Soviet bloc. Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet leader, introduced reforms like glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring. But these efforts were not enough to save the Soviet system. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, marking the end of the Cold War and the triumph of capitalism and democracy. The collapse of the Soviet Union reshaped the global order, leaving the United States as the undisputed superpower and signaling the end of the ideological conflict that had defined much of the previous century. The digital revolution marked a profound shift in the way the world operated, driven by the rapid advancements in computing, the internet, and digital technologies. It began in the latter half of the 20th century and accelerated dramatically in the 21st century, revolutionizing almost every aspect of modern life. What began with the development of early computers and rudimentary networks blossomed into an era where digital tools and platforms influence nearly every industry, facet of communication, and daily interaction. At the heart of the digital revolution was the computer. Initially large, cumbersome, and expensive machines, computers evolved into sleek, portable devices, with personal computers becoming a common feature in homes and offices. These devices were powered by microprocessors, a groundbreaking invention that allowed for faster and more efficient computing. The widespread availability of personal computers in the 1980s and 1990s enabled individuals and businesses to perform tasks more efficiently, from word processing to complex calculations. Parallel to this was the rise of the Internet, a network of interconnected computers that allowed for the exchange of information on an unprecedented scale. The Internet began as a military communication tool, but quickly expanded into a global system that linked people, information, and resources across the world. The invention of the World Wide Web in the early 1990s made it accessible to the public, creating a vast, virtual space where anyone could share knowledge, engage with others, and conduct business. This transformation fundamentally altered how people accessed information and communicated with each other, laying the groundwork for the digital world we live in today. Communication, one of the most significantly affected areas, underwent a revolution as the Internet made it easier, faster, and cheaper to connect with others. Email quickly replaced traditional mail, and instant messaging and video calls made face-to-face communication possible from anywhere. Social media platforms, emerging in the early 2000s, became global hubs for social interaction, allowing people to share thoughts, images, and videos with vast audiences. These platforms, such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, created new forms of social engagement and shifted the dynamics of how people formed relationships, organized events, and shared information. The digital revolution also reshaped the way people worked. The advent of cloud computing, which allows for the storage and access of data over the Internet, enabled people to work from virtually anywhere, leading to the rise of remote work. Digital tools like project management software, video conferencing, and real-time document collaboration made global teamwork more efficient than ever. The shift toward automation and artificial intelligence also transformed industries, with robots and algorithms increasingly performing tasks traditionally handled by humans. Global connectivity became a hallmark of the digital age. People across the globe could communicate, collaborate, and trade in ways that were once unimaginable. The rise of e-commerce transformed shopping, while streaming services revolutionized entertainment consumption. Digital technology blurred geographical and cultural boundaries, allowing ideas, products, and cultures to spread across borders effortlessly. While the digital revolution brought remarkable benefits, it also introduced new challenges. Issues of privacy, security, and digital inequality became pressing concerns, as did the impact of social media on mental health and the spread of misinformation. Still, the revolution continues to unfold, shaping the world in ways that will define the future. The digital revolution is not just a period of technological change, it is a transformation that continues to redefine what it means to live, work, and interact in the modern world. Globalization has reshaped the world in profound ways, creating an increasingly interconnected global system. This interconnectedness, driven by advances in trade, technology, and culture, has led to the rapid exchange of ideas, goods, services, and information across borders. What was once a world of relatively isolated nations is now a single, fluid network where events in one part of the world can quickly ripple across the globe, influencing economics, politics, and societies. The process has been facilitated by key technological advancements, such as the Internet, which allows for instant communication, and the proliferation of transportation technologies, which have made global trade and travel more accessible than ever before. The expansion of global trade has been a defining feature of globalization. The liberalization of markets, the reduction of trade barriers, and the establishment of international institutions like the World Trade Organization have all played a role in fostering a global economy. Companies are now able to source materials, labor, and expertise from virtually anywhere, which has led to the creation of multinational corporations. These corporations, in turn, have created vast supply chains that span multiple countries, allowing businesses to access new markets and tap into cheaper production costs. The growth of e-commerce has further accelerated the movement of goods and services across borders, as consumers can now purchase products from anywhere in the world with just a few clicks. Technology has been the driving force behind many of these changes, particularly in communications. The internet has transformed the way people interact, share ideas, and access information. Social media platforms have created global communities, allowing individuals to connect and engage with others from different cultures and backgrounds. This digital interconnectedness has not only facilitated the spread of culture, but has also accelerated the flow of knowledge, making information more accessible than ever before. Technological innovations in fields like medicine, science, and engineering have also spread across borders, leading to faster global advancements in everything from healthcare to renewable energy. While globalization has brought numerous benefits, it has also presented significant challenges. The increasing interconnectedness of the world has led to the spread of economic crises, as seen during the 2008 financial crisis, when financial turmoil in one country quickly spread to others. This interconnectedness has also heightened concerns over income inequality, as the benefits of globalization have not been evenly distributed. While some regions and industries have flourished, others have been left behind, leading to rising discontent and political polarization. Furthermore, the growing dominance of multinational corporations has raised questions about the power of global companies in influencing local economies and governments. Emerging economies, particularly China and India, have played a crucial role in globalization. Both countries have seen rapid economic growth over the past few decades, driven by their increasing integration into the global economy. China, in particular, has become a global manufacturing hub and an economic powerhouse, while India has seen a boom in its technology and service sectors. As these economies grow, they are reshaping global trade, investment, and politics, with China's Belt and Road Initiative symbolizing its growing influence in global affairs. Globalization is a complex and multifaceted process that continues to evolve. It has brought unprecedented benefits in terms of economic growth, technological progress, and cultural exchange. But it has also raised new challenges in terms of inequality, environmental sustainability, and geopolitical tensions. As the world becomes ever more interconnected, the future of globalization will likely hinge on how these challenges are addressed and whether the benefits can be shared more equitably across the globe. In recent decades, the rise of environmental awareness has fundamentally reshaped global discourse. The consequences of industrialization, deforestation, and unchecked consumption have brought environmental degradation to the forefront of societal concerns. This shift in consciousness has given birth to sustainability movements, which advocate for practices that meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Across the globe, people are becoming more attuned to the impact their actions have on the planet, from reducing waste and conserving water to supporting renewable energy and sustainable agriculture. These movements, fueled by scientific evidence and grassroots activism, have sparked a global conversation on how to create a balance between development and environmental preservation. The impact of climate change stands as one of the most urgent issues of the 21st century. The Earth's climate system has been irrevocably altered by human activities, particularly the burning of fossil fuels, which has led to an unprecedented rise in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. This, in turn, has caused global temperatures to rise, resulting in more extreme weather patterns, sea level rise, and the melting of polar ice caps. Climate change threatens ecosystems, human livelihoods, and food security, with vulnerable communities in coastal and low-lying regions bearing the brunt of its impact. Forests, oceans, and biodiversity are also feeling the strain as ecosystems become more fragile and species face the risk of extinction due to habitat loss and changing environmental conditions. Efforts to combat environmental degradation have been multifaceted and often require international cooperation. The 2015 Paris Agreement, for example, represented a global commitment to limit the increase in global temperatures to below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. While this was a significant milestone, much work remains to be done to curb emissions, transition to renewable energy sources, and protect carbon sinks like forests. In addition to government action, private industries and businesses are increasingly being called to adopt sustainable practices. Green technologies, such as solar and wind power, electric vehicles, and energy-efficient buildings, are becoming central to the global effort to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and mitigate climate change. Protecting biodiversity is another critical aspect of environmental preservation. The Earth's ecosystems are intricately linked, and the loss of species can have cascading effects on entire habitats and food chains. Efforts to protect biodiversity include the establishment of national parks, wildlife reserves, and global conservation programs, which aim to safeguard endangered species and restore damaged ecosystems. The fight to preserve biodiversity is complicated by the pressures of industrial expansion, agriculture, and urbanization, but many initiatives have shown promise. Conservation efforts, particularly those that empower local communities to protect their natural resources, have proven to be some of the most effective in maintaining biodiversity. While the challenges are daunting, the growing environmental awareness and the collective actions being taken offer hope. The task of protecting the planet requires a shift in both individual and collective responsibility, where sustainability becomes embedded in everyday life, from the food we consume to the products we buy. It also demands continued global cooperation, innovation, and a long-term commitment to the well-being of the Earth and its inhabitants. The future of the planet depends on how humanity responds to the environmental challenges of today. The rise of artificial intelligence, AI, and automation technologies marks one of the most significant advancements of the 21st century. These innovations have rapidly transformed industries, reshaping how businesses operate, how products are made, and how services are delivered. From autonomous vehicles to advanced machine learning systems, AI has found applications in nearly every sector, including healthcare, finance, entertainment, and manufacturing. Automation technologies, such as robotics and smart systems, have enhanced productivity and efficiency, reducing the need for human intervention in repetitive or dangerous tasks. These breakthroughs promise to revolutionize industries, improve quality of life, and increase global economic output. However, the potential of AI and automation is not without its risks and challenges. One of the most pressing concerns is the impact on the workforce. As machines become more capable of performing complex tasks, many fear the displacement of workers, particularly in low-skill or routine jobs. The shift toward automation could lead to significant unemployment in certain sectors, raising questions about how to adapt to these changes. There is an ongoing debate about the need for reskilling programs to help workers transition to new roles, as well as the ethical considerations of creating a workforce dependent on AI and automation. This tension between technological progress and job displacement could lead to greater social inequality unless steps are taken to ensure fair economic opportunities for all. The ethics of AI also present significant dilemmas. As AI systems become more autonomous and capable of making decisions, questions arise about accountability and bias. How can society ensure that AI technologies are designed and used in ways that are fair, transparent, and ethical? Instances of AI systems making biased decisions, particularly in areas like criminal justice and hiring practices, have highlighted the risks of relying on algorithms that are not properly trained or monitored. The role of AI in decision-making raises complex ethical concerns, especially when it comes to ensuring that the technology serves the public good rather than exacerbating existing inequalities. Despite these challenges, the role of AI and automation in shaping the future is undeniable. These technologies are poised to drive new innovations, enhance productivity, and potentially solve some of humanity's most pressing problems. AI holds the potential to revolutionize healthcare with precision medicine, improve sustainability with smarter resource management, and accelerate scientific discovery in fields like quantum computing and space exploration. As technology continues to advance, it will reshape the fabric of society, influencing everything from how we work to how we interact with the world around us. The future of AI and automation is still unfolding, and its impact will depend on how societies choose to manage these technologies. The key will be finding a balance between harnessing the benefits of AI and automation while addressing the ethical, social, and economic implications they bring. As these technologies evolve, they will undoubtedly play a pivotal role in shaping future civilizations, and their influence will extend far beyond industry and commerce into every aspect of human life. The global landscape is undergoing a profound transformation, marked by a shifting balance of power that reflects the complexities of the 21st century. As traditional powers such as the United States, China, and Russia continue to exert influence, new actors, both state and non-state, are emerging, changing the dynamics of international relations. While large governments still hold significant sway, the rise of regional powers, economic blocs, and multinational corporations has led to a more multipolar world. In this evolving order, the traditional concepts of sovereignty and dominance are being redefined, with new challenges and opportunities for cooperation emerging alongside competition. Non-state actors, including international organizations, corporations, and even powerful individuals, are increasingly playing pivotal roles in shaping global events. The United Nations, UN, and other multilateral institutions have become central to addressing global challenges, providing a platform for cooperation across nations. These institutions strive to mediate conflicts, promote human rights, and respond to crises such as natural disasters and humanitarian issues. However, the increasing prominence of non-state actors, including multinational corporations and international non-governmental organizations, NGOs, also highlights the complexities of governance in a globalized world, where influence often extends beyond borders and traditional political structures. In this new world order, cooperation between states is often overshadowed by the growing challenges of terrorism, pandemics, and political unrest, which transcend national borders. Terrorism, driven by ideological or political motives, continues to destabilize regions and threaten the security of individuals and nations alike. The rise of global terrorism has prompted new approaches to security, with international coalitions formed to combat extremist groups and prevent the spread of violent ideologies. Yet, the reach of terrorism is not confined to any one nation, and the challenge of addressing it requires collective efforts that go beyond traditional military strategies. Similarly, the global response to pandemics, such as the COVID-19 crisis, has exposed both the vulnerabilities and the potential for global cooperation. The pandemic revealed how interconnected the world has become, with the spread of diseases no longer confined to specific regions, but impacting every corner of the globe. While nations initially struggled with responses and vaccine distribution, the subsequent efforts for collaboration in research and vaccine development demonstrated the power of international cooperation, even in the face of competition and national self-interest. However, the pandemic also revealed the fragility of health systems and the need for better preparedness in addressing future global health crises. Political unrest, fueled by economic inequality, social justice movements, and the erosion of trust in traditional institutions, also plays a central role in shaping the modern world order. From protests in the streets to the rise of populist leaders challenging the status quo, the demand for political and economic change is louder than ever. These movements, while diverse in their goals, share a common thread of challenging established systems that they view as ineffective, corrupt, or out of touch with the needs of the people. In this environment, the new world order will depend on how global leaders and institutions navigate the tensions between national sovereignty, economic interests, and the calls for greater justice and reform. The shifting balance of power is an ever-changing landscape, where cooperation and conflict are equally inevitable, and the future remains uncertain. The world stands at the precipice of an era defined by groundbreaking advancements that have the potential to reshape every facet of human life. In fields like medicine, space exploration, and sustainable technology, the pace of innovation is accelerating, offering new solutions to some of humanity's most pressing challenges. The expansion of knowledge and the refinement of existing technologies are leading us toward a future that once seemed distant, bringing both unprecedented opportunities and complex ethical dilemmas. Medicine has undergone revolutionary transformations, driven by the rapid progression of technologies such as artificial intelligence, gene editing, and personalized medicine. With the aid of AI, doctors can now diagnose diseases with greater accuracy and speed, while genomics is opening doors to treatments tailored specifically to an individual's genetic makeup. One of the most profound developments is the emergence of CRISPR, a powerful tool that allows scientists to edit genes with remarkable precision. This breakthrough has the potential to eradicate genetic disorders, improve crop yields, and even fight off diseases before they emerge. However, the power to alter the genetic code also raises important questions about ethics, consent, and the boundaries of human intervention in the natural world. The promise of biotechnology, while immense, is tempered by the risks it poses, particularly in the realm of genetic engineering, where unintended consequences could arise from manipulating the very building blocks of life. Space exploration has also entered a golden age, fueled by both government agencies and private corporations pushing the boundaries of what is possible. SpaceX, Blue Origin, and other companies are paving the way for commercial space travel, while NASA and international space agencies continue their quest to understand the cosmos. Plans for crewed missions to Mars, the search for extraterrestrial life, and the construction of permanent space stations signal a new chapter in humanity's journey beyond Earth. Yet, as we reach for the stars, we must also confront the challenges of sustainable space exploration, the dangers of space debris, the long-term health effects of space travel on the human body, and the ethical considerations of claiming celestial bodies as new frontiers are issues that must be addressed. Parallel to the advancement of space and medicine, the need for sustainable technologies has never been more pressing. Climate change, deforestation, and the depletion of natural resources have underscored the urgency of shifting towards renewable energy sources. Solar, wind, and hydropower technologies are becoming more efficient and cost-effective, offering viable alternatives to fossil fuels. The rise of electric vehicles and innovations in energy storage, such as advanced batteries, are contributing to the reduction of carbon emissions. Still, the transition to a green economy is not without its challenges. The infrastructure required to support these technologies, the sourcing of materials for renewable energy systems, and the potential environmental impacts of new technologies must all be carefully considered. As we embrace these innovations, the age of rapid technological development brings a sense of both hope and caution. The path forward will require wisdom, regulation, and international cooperation to ensure that the promise of innovation is realized without compromising the well-being of future generations. The balance between progress and responsibility will define the legacy of the age we are living in. History, in its vast expanse, offers invaluable lessons about the nature of governance, society, and the trajectory of civilizations. From the rise and fall of empires to the quiet, steady progress of smaller societies, the patterns of human achievement and collapse reveal profound truths. One of the most consistent lessons history teaches is the cyclical nature of civilizations. Empires and societies may experience periods of incredible flourishing, marked by innovation, cultural richness, and technological advancement, only to be followed by decline, collapse, or transformation. The reasons for this are varied corruption, external invasions, environmental factors, economic instability, and internal strife, but they point to an essential truth. The stability and longevity of a civilization are never guaranteed. The fate of past civilizations serves as a powerful reminder of the fragility of human accomplishments. Ancient Rome, for example, reached unparalleled heights of cultural, architectural, and military might, only to fall victim to political infighting, economic decline, and the pressures of barbarian invasions. Similarly, the great Sumerian city-states, once symbols of early urban development and technological progress, eventually succumbed to the rise of new powers in Mesopotamia. These examples show that no matter how advanced a civilization may become, it remains vulnerable to forces both internal and external. The collapse of these societies was often not a single cataclysmic event, but rather a series of missteps and failures to adapt to changing conditions. However, history also offers hope, as it shows us that human societies can rebuild, learn, and innovate even after destruction. The Renaissance, for instance, emerged from the ashes of the Dark Ages, fueled by rediscoveries of ancient knowledge and a renewed focus on humanism. Likewise, modern civilizations have benefited from the lessons of the past, as democracies and republics have learned the importance of balance and the dangers of authoritarianism, thanks to the cautionary tales of past empires. At the heart of these lessons lies the importance of preserving cultural heritage. The stories, traditions, art, and ideas of past societies serve as both a mirror and a guide. They remind us of our shared humanity, our potential for greatness, and the consequences of neglecting our responsibilities. In an era where technology and progress often outpace reflection and historical understanding, it becomes crucial to safeguard and learn from our collective heritage. By studying the rise and fall of civilizations, we can better understand the complex dynamics that shape human history and apply these insights to contemporary challenges. In this age of rapid technological advancement and political change, we are once again faced with the task of building sustainable, inclusive societies. As we look to the future, we must remember the lessons of the past, the importance of adaptability, the fragility of power, and the need to preserve the core values that make a civilization endure. Only by understanding where we have come from can we hope to navigate the complexities of the present and build a future that honors the achievements of those who came before us. As we stand on the threshold of the future, humanity faces a landscape shaped by unprecedented technological advancements, global interconnectedness, and complex social challenges. The potential paths forward for civilization are as vast and varied as the history we have inherited. On one hand, we are poised to achieve extraordinary feats in areas like artificial intelligence, space exploration, and renewable energy, with the promise of transforming our societies in ways that were once the stuff of science fiction. On the other, we are confronted with pressing issues: climate change, political instability, and economic inequality that demand urgent and thoughtful action. The 21st century presents both tremendous opportunities and daunting challenges. In the realm of technology, we have the potential to revolutionize industries, improve lives, and address long-standing issues like poverty and disease. Advances in medicine and biotechnology hold the promise of extending life and curing ailments that once seemed insurmountable. Meanwhile, the rapid growth of artificial intelligence and automation is poised to reshape the global workforce, offering new opportunities, but also presenting the risk of displacement and inequality. In the face of these shifts, the challenge will be to ensure that these advancements benefit all of humanity and do not exacerbate existing divides. Yet, as we look toward these remarkable possibilities, we must also be mindful of the lessons from the past. The ancient civilizations that came before us achieved greatness, but were also undone by their failure to adapt to changing circumstances or by their inability to address internal inequalities. The rise and fall of these empires serve as a stark reminder that power, no matter how seemingly invincible, is always fragile. We must take heed of the historical patterns of overexpansion, unsustainable resource use, and social disintegration, ensuring that we do not repeat the mistakes of those who came before us. In this context, the future of civilization depends not only on technological progress, but on our ability to learn from the mistakes of the past and apply those lessons to the challenges of today. The need for cooperation, adaptability, and foresight has never been greater. As the world becomes more interconnected, the actions of one nation or community can have far-reaching consequences. The future will require us to find new ways to collaborate, to forge solutions that respect cultural diversity, while addressing global issues like climate change, resource depletion, and human rights. As we venture into this uncertain future, the key to survival and prosperity will be to balance innovation with wisdom, progress with reflection. We must remember that the power of civilization is not only in its technology or might, but in its capacity for empathy, justice, and sustainability. Just as the ancient world's rise and fall were shaped by the choices its people made, so too will the fate of our civilization be determined by the decisions we make today. If we can learn from the past, honor our shared humanity, and act with wisdom, the future of civilization may be brighter than ever before.